I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, the invocation is going to be given by me. So please bow your head for a very short invocation. Our Heavenly Father, tonight, let the thoughts in our minds and the words that we speak be acceptable in your sight. Amen.
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 Amen. Item number 4, adjustment approval of the September 18, 2018 meeting agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to adopt the September 18, 2018 meeting agenda with the following changes. Add to new business, consider amending the council's CY 2018 meeting calendar on file to add a workshop at 6 p.m. Tuesday, September 25th.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5, public comment period. I need some sheets. If we don't have the sheets, we won't have a comment period. Oh, yes, we would. Thank you. All right, we're going to open a comment period, and first up is Christine Quante. How are we doing tonight? Better than we were Friday and Saturday, right?
Hi, my name is Christine Quante. I'm representing the Chamber of Commerce here in town. And I just wanted to take a few seconds this evening to tell you all thank you, both the town, our fire department, our police department, the town council, the town staff. We heard great things throughout the weekend from different people, both our business members as well as board members. So on behalf and the businesses saying how well it was coordinated, the response to this impending storm up front, as well as while we experienced it and after Hurricane Florence. So wanted to say thank you. The board specifically asked me tonight to speak, to say thank you on behalf of our staff, our board, and our business members. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Christine. Next is Diana Nguyen.
Good evening. My name is Diana Nguyen. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Wake County. We're a nonpartisan political organization working to encourage active participation in government. Last month, on August 23rd, the League hosted its annual Women's Equality Day reception, where we celebrate the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which was ratified in 1920 and gave women the right to vote in the United States. That evening, we recognized all women currently elected to state and county offices, to city and town councils within Wake County, and to the judiciary. Unfortunately, Councilors Lee and Kelly were unable to attend. I'm here to present them with the certificates of appreciation that they would have received that evening. Each certificate reads as follows. The League of Women Voters of Wake County presents this certificate to Councilor Christine Kelly for her public service and in celebration of Women's Equality Day. And the League of Women Voters of Wake County presents this certificate to Councilor Sherry Ann Lee for her public service and in celebration of Women's Equality Day. On behalf of the League, we thank you both for your service to the citizens of Holly Springs. And with the permission of the mayor, may I approach the dais and hand them their certificates?
You may. I feel like a judge. Please approach the bench.
I so wanted to go to the meeting that night. Yes. Thank you. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Definitely next year.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Congratulations, ladies.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Gerald Holloman. How are we doing, Gerald? You look great.
Be 81, I'm doing fine.
You're on the right side of the grass, right?
I want to talk to you tonight about somebody that's not here anymore.
Okay?
His name is Paris Ham-Wumble.
Yep.
How many were you here in 1984? Not very many. 1983, I was elected as mayor, and in November, Paris Ham-Wumble was on the board. We worked together for 17 years, and we saw the town grow from nothing to something. It was due to his work, and he's got a Chevrolet van, I think, sitting behind his house now, that we rode to Washington, D.C. many, many times. I bet you went to Washington, D.C. 40, 50 times in the 17 years. We met with all the legislative leaders that come from North Carolina. Jesse Helms, David Price, Richard Burr, and they sent us some money. So, I mean, Hamlin was a man that loved his town. He cared about it. He spent the time and energy to work to make this town what it is today. And he was my pal. We worked together, had the same dream, same idea, and it finally came to fruition in the early 1960s. So he gets a lot of credit for that, because he kept the people in line here, because he was a big, towering figure. And he's a person that you ought to be grateful for. That he spent his time, and I think 20 years, or maybe longer, working for this town. And he owes a lot. And I'm proud of being able to work with him. And I hope one day there'll be some recognition of this town for what he did. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald.
At this point in time, we're going to close the public hearing and go to agenda item 6A, Requests and Communications, Citizen Well Check Program, Chief Herring and Captain Patterson. Great job this weekend, too. But you'll hear more about that later.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
So the reason that we're here tonight is we just wanted to briefly inform you about a program that we're implementing, or we actually have implemented already. It's our Citizen Well Check. It's a program for our citizens, our seniors, and kind of the way we came about this, Wake County Sheriff's Department has a similar program. Oftentimes we'll get a call from a resident. It could be folks from Holly Springs, other places in the state, maybe other places in the country, and they just want us to go by and check on maybe a relative or a friend who lives alone. Most of the time it's a senior. And so we'll dispatch an officer to the residents, make sure that they're okay, and then we'll report back. So this program, and I'm going to let Captain Patterson give you the details. He actually was instrumental in helping me put this together, which is to say that he did it. But anyway, I think this is going to make the program more efficient, or make that service more efficient. And the reason we're sort of piggybacking on the Sheriff's Department's program, but this will give us a lot more latitude. We'll actually administer this program, and if we get into it and we see that we can tweak it, make things a little bit better, customize it for our citizens, then we'll have the latitude to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Patterson, and then we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Captain Patterson, can you make sure to speak into the microphone so those in back can hear?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? No? I can speak over this if I have to. Okay. Do you have a presentation attached to this I can kind of run through? Is there something I got to do to this? Touch the screen, push the screen, knock it over? Scroll? Okay. Oh, is that it?
There you go.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief with this. Chief Herring's covered most of it, and I'm fortunate to have good people working under me that did most of the work on this. So the Citizen Well Check program, like Chief Herring said, is a program that we adopted from the Wake County Sheriff's Office. The software we use is a web-based software that is actually run by Wake County Emergency Management, and it's at no cost to us. So what it'll be for us is an automated daily check-in call for seniors who are living alone. The calls will happen 365 days a year. We plan to do it daily at 2:30. It's pretty simple. There's 3 ways you can opt to receive this message from us. You can receive it on a landline, cellular phone, text, or email. I've been testing it out for about the last 30 days through text, and it'll send me a message daily. I'll press 1. If I press 1, it says that I'm okay, and it reports to the system. 15 minutes later, if I've not pressed 1 or I pressed 2 or done nothing at all, it'll show up on a report, and we'll look through that. That's checked by our staff daily. There's redundancy in the messaging system, so if I have it set up to text me and I don't answer it, it's going to try to text me one more time within 5 minutes, and then it'll go to email, landline, cell phone, whatever I have set up. So there's redundancy in it. Again, like I said, this is for senior citizens living here in town that are alone, live alone, requirements that you're 65 or older. You must have a next of kin or somebody relatively close that's available for us to contact if we're unable to get a hold of that person. We've set it up on the form we've put together that there's different options, hide a keys, different entry options for us should we not be able to get a hold of them. The program implementation will begin immediately. Our first major campaign will be Hollyfest, so we'll have at our booth set up there, we'll be doing manual registrations. We're not going to offer online registrations. We're going to do them all manually just to cut down on error inputting it into the system. The county has about 90 personnel signed up for this at this time, and we're hoping to have 10 to 20. It could be more than that, but that's just my guess. This is the form. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's a pretty redundant form, and it's just got the general info, primary contact, a secondary contact in case we can't reach the primary, obviously. It'll have some medical information and then a release of liability, which is important for us because if we respond to your house, we're looking in windows, checking doors, and we can't get in, we're going to force entry into the home. And here's your program contacts, Lieutenant Robert Parrish and myself. And I'll open it up for questions for anybody. And if you can't think of any questions tonight, you can just email one of us and we'll get back with you. So any questions?
Great program. Questions, comments?
I did have one. If it said for 65 years and older, what if you have an adult who is disabled or in poor health, who isn't 65, is here pretty much by themselves? Would they be able to be part of the program?
Yes, ma'am. It'd be a kind of a situation dictates for us, and as we're here in the story, we'll make the decision. But I think definitely 65 or older is a parameter, but it's negotiable.
Special circumstances. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
So Captain Patterson, you had said that the point of contact, they would have to live in the area? What is that?
It's helpful if they do, in case we need to get them to come to the residence, but it's not a necessary. It's almost like the 65 or older piece. It kind of situation dictates, and we'll make a call as we're doing the manual registrations. And that's, again, why we've opted to do the manual registrations, so we can have these conversations with the folks signing up and ask them these questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
That's great.
Looking good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great program.
Yep.
Great program.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Agenda item 6B, request communications, Wake Bus Plan, Mary Kate oh, help me with that. I knew that. Go Triangle.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, council members. My name is Mary Kate Marukian. I'm here from Go Triangle as a representative from the Wake Transit staff to give you an update on the Wake Bus Plan and let you know what changes are coming for Holly Springs. This will be a
The Triangle area is one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. Wake County alone has more than 1 million residents, and that number grows by more than 60 people per day. The Wake Transit Plan is part of a larger regional investment to make sure we prepare to meet the travel needs of our growing region. The plan expands access to opportunities and helps connect more people to jobs, schools, healthcare, and entertainment without adding to traffic. The plan has 4 related goals: connect the region, connect all Wake County communities, provide frequent, reliable urban mobility, and enhance access to transit. And it does this through investments in high-capacity transit, such as bus rapid transit and commuter rail, new and improved facilities like bus stops, transit centers, and park and rides, a program to help fund services in communities without local transit service, and a plan for tripling the amount of bus service that was available when the plan was adopted. The Wake Bus Plan is an important part of the overall effort. The bus plan changes the way bus service works in Wake County in very significant ways, making it easier and more convenient to use and attracting more people to get on board. First, the plan streamlines the path of bus routes. This means some people will need to walk further to their bus stop, but service will be faster and more direct. This also helps the bus stay on time. Second, bus service will be organized around where the highest number of people are riding. The routes with the most riders will have the most frequent service. The routes with fewer riders will come less often, but connect into the network of frequent service. Third, Wake County towns will be linked in with the transit network with express routes that connect to regional transit centers. They will also have access to funding to create and operate their own transit services and projects. And to tie it all together, riders will be supported with better, more comfortable waiting areas, enhanced passenger information, and more park and ride spaces and locations. The Wake Bus Plan will change the DNA of bus service in our region. It is the largest investment in public transit that our region has ever seen. We have already begun implementing some of these improvements. Many routes now have service earlier in the morning, later at night, and on weekends. And it's working. Sunday ridership has increased by more than 60% since new service was added. We'll continue to add new services and build new bus stops each year through 2027. The first step to implementing the Wake Bus Plan was to develop a method to prioritize transit improvements based on community and equity goals. Next, planners and leaders worked with community members to develop a plan for phasing transit improvements over a 10-year period based on availability of funding and feedback on people's priorities. Using public input, planners have developed detailed implementation plans for the next 4 to 5 years. The proposal includes routes and services that meet the goals of the Wake Transit Plan and is designed to triple the number of people currently using transit. By creating a transit network that is more efficient and easier to use, our region can continue to grow while preserving our quality of life. This is where we need your help. We want to hear from you about how the proposed transit system changes and improvements would impact you. Planners will use your input to refine the proposals and prepare the final Wake Bus Plan later this year. Learn more about the investments in the Wake Transit Plan and how you can get involved at goforwardnc.com/waketransit.
Okay, thank you. So we're here to talk about the Wake Bus Plan. Just to reiterate what the video went over, Wake County is growing. There are over 60 people moving to the Triangle a day. A lot of those folks have cars, and the majority of those folks are driving by themselves in those cars. The equivalent of a new Morrisville every year. We've all experienced it. Traffic gets worse every year, and definitely has since I've moved here. So our goal is to get people out of their cars onto the buses, but to do that, we really need to improve the transit service, make it more available to folks living in the area. So in 2016, there was a voter-approved sales tax initiative, half-cent sales tax increase. All of that goes to transit. We're going to expand bus service, improve the amenities, making it more enticing for folks to get on the bus, more pleasant to wait at stops, implement bus rapid transit, which is what I like to call light rail light, and then build a 37-mile commuter rail from Garner to Durham over the next 10 years, well, I guess 8 years now. So this map kind of goes over the large-scale investments that are happening within the region. What it doesn't show is the huge investment in bus service that will be happening over the next 10 years. We're going to be focusing on increasing the frequent bus service network, so that means 15 minutes or better. Studies show that folks are more likely to disregard the schedule, just walk out to a bus stop if the bus stop is coming every 10 minutes or better. So 15 minutes will get us a little closer, and perhaps we can increase that if the ridership is high. We're going to be improving links between major destinations, colleges, universities, shopping centers, medical facilities, and then providing bus service to areas where it currently isn't, like Holly Springs and Rollsville. We're also going to be, as I said, improving customer waiting areas with new park and ride lots, better transfer points, just better transit centers all around with better technologies. Just an overview of the services that will be rolling out in the next year. Holly Springs and Rollsville, providing service to areas that don't currently have it was the first priority of this phase of bus service improvements. So Holly Springs and Rollsville will be getting their commuter routes later, the next fall. Service from Knightdale to Raleigh will expand to all day, and Morrisville will also expand to serve the new Wake Tech campus in RTP. And then this is just a really high-level overview of all the services that are being implemented now through 2024. Every 4 years, the bus plan staff or the Wake Transit staff will come out to the communities and give a detailed overview, route by route, what's happening. Right now, we've done that fiscal year 20, which is next fall, through 2024. In another 4 years, we'll update the plan, change routes that need to be changed. A lot can change in 10 years, so we'll make adjustments where we need to and come back out with new details for you. More details. So what does that mean for Holly Springs? So our next fall, we will be rolling out the Holly Springs Express. This will be operated by Go Carry, and that will operate, we assume, from downtown Holly Springs. We will work with town staff to find the best location for that park and ride. That hasn't been finalized yet, so you still have time to weigh in. That will connect Holly Springs with the Cary train station via Apex. So the route will travel along NC 55, Salem Street, Old Apex Road to Apex, and then interact with other routes serving Apex, giving folks the opportunity to transfer to a more frequent route headed to Raleigh, continue on to the Cary train station, or connect with the route that goes directly to RTP. Feel free to jump in with questions, by the way. I didn't say that before. So the 311 is one of the routes that will be interacting with the Holly Springs Express in Apex. That will be the route giving folks the opportunity to just go straight to the RTP, to the Regional Transit Center in RTP. The 305 is the route that will go directly to downtown. So just a couple details about the Holly Springs Express. It will operate just at peak commuting time. So morning and evening, 3 trips in the morning, 3 trips in the afternoon and evening. That'll be hourly. But this will be reviewed after 18 months to see the ridership. If we need to increase that frequency, we will, depending on the demand. That could also be extended to serve the midday as well. There's opportunity for growth, is what I'm saying. The 305, that will run every 30 minutes. That's going to be extended to all day, so that'll provide all-day connections to Raleigh once you get to Apex. And then in a few years, the thought is that will be extended to every 30 minutes, 7 days a week, instead of just weekdays. But that is operated. The other routes that the Holly Springs Express interacts with are operated by Go Triangle. So I mentioned capital improvements, the park and ride lot in Holly Springs. We will start planning for that this year. There's a feasibility study that's slated to start in the next few months. We'll be doing site selection, what area can be served best by buses. You don't mind having a bus rumbling through every hour in the morning. We want space for at least 25 vehicles. There will be shelters, good lighting, safety first, right, police officers, good waiting areas, ADA accessible. All new stops will be ADA accessible with ramps, paved areas, and bike parking. So this is designed to attract and retain riders. We want to make it attractive and competitive with the automobile. Nobody's going to get on the bus if they can get there faster in their car. So we want to make it competitive, and that means streamlining the service for commuters. So not a lot of local stops, so we do need input from the town staff on where the best location would be, so that people are more inclined to get on the bus. There'll also be new updated facilities in Apex to make those transfers more pleasant. If you end up waiting a little bit, it is an hourly route. If you're waiting 15, 20 minutes, we want that wait to be pleasant. Like I said, it'll just be enhanced to entice people to get on the bus. And so those areas, similar to the facilities in Holly Springs, will have a very large shelter, plenty of seating, trash facilities, bike parking, good lighting, and sign displays so you know where you are. You have the schedule for the bus accessible. There will also be an opportunity for municipalities to apply for funding through Wake Transit for programs that they'd like to implement in their own municipalities. Not everybody wants to get on the bus and go to RTP or go to Raleigh. Some folks would like to have access to their area in Holly Springs. So there will be funding, a 50% match for Holly Springs or a Morrisville or a Garner to apply for programs to operate within their own areas. Right now, you can apply for funding for planning studies or technical assistance operating a route if you already have something that you have in mind. And then in fiscal year 20, you can start applying for funds for operating services. There was an initial study done to show which areas in Holly Springs would be most likely to support transit, where you could run a service that it would get ridership, be productive. Those areas are shown in yellow, orange, and red on this map. Based on that analysis, there were a couple suggestions thrown out, including subsidizing Uber and Lyft trips. Not every municipality, a fixed route 40-foot bus is appropriate. It might be a smaller bus. It might be a demand response small vehicle that the city operates, similar to an Uber and Lyft, but it's operated by the town. Or it could be a flex route between Fuquay and Holly Springs. That was an initial idea that was thrown out. These services are imagined to connect with the fixed route services that do operate all day, connecting with Raleigh and Cary. So providing access around Holly Springs, but also providing access to Cary, Apex, Raleigh, and RTP. So we would love to hear from you. As the video said, you can visit goforwardnc.com/wake. We've wrapped up our formal meetings. This is actually my last council presentation, but we are extending outreach through the end of the month, so please feel free to submit comments online through the end of the month. Were there any questions?
Questions or comments of Mary Kate?
Do your buses have Wi-Fi connectivity?
They do.
on? They do?
They do.
What would be your recommendation if we wanted to service Wake Tech students from Holly Springs to Fuquay? Because right now they'd have to go all the way up and back down, right?
Right. So that was one of the recommendations for the, and I will plug our Youth Go Pass in just a minute, but that was one of the recommendations of the community funding area, was to provide a flex route, so operate at times of day that you feel the demand exists. So based on the Wake Tech schedule or based on what you hear from your constituents, we imagine you would do an outreach, and you would get assistance from Wake County on that, but you would do an outreach effort to survey your residents to see what kind of service they would imagine. But there has also been some ideas kicked around of possibly a route from Holly Springs to Fuquay in the future, just extending that, so that might be a possibility. And there actually is going to be an improvement on the FRX, the Fuquay Express, that would serve Wake Tech directly. So if that connection does happen, if we do see a demand in Holly Springs for the Holly Springs Express, I think that would be a good argument to make that that connection would be productive.
Yeah, that's come up at Campo, MPO, and we're going to pursue that. That's a good
Great.
point.
That's a
Other
good-
comments or questions?
Yeah, you had mentioned that bus service from Holly Springs to RTP, that would be, I guess, one stop at RTP. RTP is pretty big. Are you working with companies there to do some type of shuttle service? Because I think that's going to be a challenge. People that want to take the bus, they may have to walk,
Right.
a mile or two.
Right.
So are you prepared to work with the companies there, or do you have a solution for those that want to take a bus that we're going to have to take a secondary bus, right?
Right,
Have you
so-
looked at that?
Right, yes, and that is a huge issue. RTP is enormous. It sounds like one little area, you get off the bus, I'm here, but it's like you said, there's miles and miles of businesses. So right now, we did have circulator shuttles. We had a group of 4 shuttles that served the different areas in RTP. We have now, the ridership wasn't great, so we've transitioned that to an on-demand shuttle service. So similar to what I said, not exactly Uber and Lyft, but you can request a shuttle, and then it will prioritize riders in the order that they requested them. And so there are existing bus stops within RTP that you can see on Transloc, the app. That's TRANSLOC, and that does provide, for anybody that would like to ride the Holly Springs Express, that'll give you real-time bus information. If you get on that app, it'll tell you when the bus is coming, where it is on the map, GPS tracker. So that will also tell you where the existing bus stops are in RTP and give you an idea of how long you'd have to wait. Typically, people have had to wait about 15 minutes after they get off the bus, max, before they get to their destination. But you're right, it's a problem we're constantly trying to think through. And yes, ideally, the businesses would help sponsor a shuttle.
Any estimation on the amount of time it would take if I got on in Holly Springs and wanted to go to RTP through one of your other transfer locations?
Probably an hour, a little over.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, any idea what the cost might be? I mean, that's a little bit premature, but just an idea of a one-way early morning?
$250.
Okay.
Anything else? We didn't see our plans for the Holly trolley, but that's another.
Great, thank you. Oh,
Thank
and
you. Go
before
ahead.
Sure,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd like to make a plug for our Youth Go Pass. Right now, recently we had children 0 to 12 ride free. We've extended that to children ages 13 to 18. There are many locations where you can pick up the Youth Go Pass with a parent, many of the libraries throughout the county. So get your kids out of your car and on the bus. And you'll be able to do that when the Holly Springs Express comes. Do I hit escape?
Go ahead, sir. If you got a question? We don't normally do this, but we'll make an exception. Yeah, it's you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, did you say that people in Holly Springs could ride the bus in Holly Springs?
That's coming. That won't be right away. So there will be opportunity that'll come, there's a meeting at the end of the month where your elected officials will be able to meet with the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and talk about possible programs. The county will provide a 50% match for any service that the town decides is appropriate for Holly Springs. So if you would like a local circulator or on-demand service or Uber and Lyft subsidies where the town would pay a portion of your trip, that would be up to you to communicate that to your elected officials so they could pass it along. Absolutely. And that's the thought, right? Not everybody, there are a lot of retired people that don't need to go to RTP or downtown, but they need to go to the grocery store. Right.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Seeing none. Thank you, Mary Kate.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
We'll stay in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Agenda item 7A, public hearing 18 REZO 6204 Holly Springs Road, Matt Beard. Evening, Matt.
Good evening. All right, so the first item up for you tonight is a rezoning petition to change zoning from local business limited to R8 residential. What you'll be doing tonight is first considering the request. I'll provide you with an overview. You will then hold a public hearing. After that, you will make motions to approve, deny, or table. There'll be 2 separate motions, one to make and accept the statement of compatibility, the second to actually vote to change the zoning of the property. So the property in question is located at the southeast corner of Raleigh Street and Holly Springs Road. It is approximately 1/4 of an acre. And as previously stated, the request is to change the zoning from LB, Local Business Limited, to R8 Residential. So the LB Limited district is kind of a holdover from a previous version of our Unified Development Ordinance that was intended for really low-intensity kind of office and institutional uses. The size of the property makes really any type of development difficult. With our 50-foot thoroughfare buffer, the approximate 100-foot depth of the property as it sits is greatly reduced. The property is designated as being within our village district area plan. Within that, it was shown as residential. So the proposal in front of you to go from a local business to a residential would be supported by that village district plan. If you have any questions for engineering, we can have Rachel come up and run through. Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Evening, Rachel.
All right. So with this rezoning, they are required to tie to municipal water and sewer. Any additional studies or evaluations that would be needed to determine size and location of extension would be determined at the time of a development plan. The project is also required to dedicate right-of-way along the property frontage in accordance with the town's engineering, design, and construction standards and the comprehensive transportation plan. Any required street improvements would be determined at such time as a particular development plan would be proposed. If more than one single-family home or a minor subdivision is proposed, the project would be required to construct the road improvements across the frontage, or a fee in lieu may be considered for the construction of those improvements. This project is would be required to adhere to the town's NPDES Phase 2 post-construction stormwater ordinance and any other applicable requirements of the stream basin. Do you all have any additional questions?
Questions of Rachel?
I just want to make sure I understood that. So if there's more than one single-family residence, that would be the only trigger for the required improvements of the right-of-way, or is the right-of-way dedication regardless of what use is ultimately going to end up on the parcel?
Correct. So the right-of-way dedication would be required with a single-family home or any development
anything.
on
Okay.
that project site. Anything more than a single-family home would require the construction of the road improvements across the property frontage.
So right-of-way is required, but then anything above a single-family home would require them to construct it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Do you
Other
know-
questions or comments?
Yes.
Rachel?
Rachel, do you know for that property where the entrance, what they're planning to put the entrance? Because Raleigh Street was basically paved over a dirt road and is very narrow. So if they're planning to do stuff off of Raleigh Street, is there any consideration to maybe also widen that area?
So it would be expected that the entrance would come off of Raleigh Street. We wouldn't know what would be proposed until a plan is submitted. However, any additional improvements, additional pavement that would be needed to make that feasible would have to be addressed at that time. So if there's widening that is required along the frontage on Raleigh Street, we would address that at the time.
At that time, okay. It's inevitable, we're going to have to do something on Raleigh Street because it's so narrow with the amount of traffic. Okay.
Yes.
Other questions or comments of Rachel? Seeing none? Thank you, Rachel.
Good, thank you.
Any further questions or comments before we open the public hearing from Matt?
I have one more, actually. It might be for Rachel, but the Holly Springs Road widening project, this is sort of right in the middle or close to that. Is there any impact from the pending project we have there as far as the right-of-way, or since they dedicated it, we'd be okay with the dedication? Sorry to make you come back.
We need a roving mic.
I need the walk. It's all right. Yes, so that right-of-way dedication would accommodate the
The
road
need,
widening
okay.
that's expected to come along with the town project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that there are a couple of possibilities that exist if the rezoning was approved and they went to R8, just base zoning district. They could greatly increase their building envelope by coming through with an infill development options request, which would go back through first a staff review, then planning board, and then back to you guys for approval. The other option is to place a far smaller house on a far smaller building envelope that meets all of our minimum setbacks for the R8 district, which would, as I previously mentioned, the 50-foot thoroughfare buffer, there's a 20-foot setback off of the Raleigh Street, there's 20-foot setbacks off the rear property lines, and a 5-foot setback off of all side property lines. So if you look at the kind of the shape of the site, it's,
That way.
I know what I would do, but I can't.
I hear you.
Just want to make sure that that is out there, that there is always the possibility of a by-right single-family home coming onto the property. And I will let Mr. Crandall come up and speak to the planning board discussion items. If you'd like to come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. So the only item that came up by the planning board was in reference to some concerns setting precedents for of offsetting taxpayers to fund road improvements for future developments in residential versus commercial. And there really were no other items addressed by the planning board. So.
Questions of Ann?
What is the difference between the residential and commercial in terms of town and cost?
Not sure I heard
More-
you.
More doing, more, they'd have more, a little more road improvement they would have to do, widening in front of there. A commercial would, instead of just the right of way.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think that discussion item was more on the fact that when really any non-residential development, non-single-family residential development comes through, that road improvements are part of the requirement, of the base requirement. And if we are going from a zoning district where any project that came in that zoning district would require the developer to build those road improvements, and taking it to a district where they would potentially not have to do that, all of a sudden we are placing higher burden on the taxpayers to fund these road improvements, as the town would have to come through and do it at a later date. I believe that was what Mr. McGrath had stated.
Answer? Questions? Yeah, kind of. Okay. If there's no further questions right now, let's open the public hearing, and I want to call Roy Martin, the only person who signed up. Roy Martin, am I correct?
I don't have anything to add now, I just wanted to be able to speak after I heard. My main concern was,
Well, would you come forward? Please come forward anyway. That way we can put you on record, sir. But you're welcome to say anything you want. Would you state your name and address, please?
Roy Morton, 216 Holly Springs Road.
Right.
My property will be affected by the road widening up there, and we've lived for close to 2 decades with it being restricted, with the residential values of not being able to get refinancing on home mortgages and things by it being zoned. So we've lived under the commercial for a couple of decades, and my concern was if this changes the values right before the town's getting ready to settle with owners through there for the widening project. That was my only concern,
Okay.
so I wanted to be here.
Appreciate that. All right, thanks, sir. At this point in time, we'll close the public hearing and have further discussion or questions. No?
No.
All set? We go to, Matt, do you have anything else to add, please?
No, I just wanted to bring up that the applicant does have a representative here if you have questions for them. Otherwise,
It'd be interesting to know, I think, what
All
they
set?
plan to do with the property.
okay, you would like to have them come up?
Yes, please.
Sure,
Okay.
whatever.
Mahmood?
And again, sir, please state your name and address.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Mahmoud Suleiman, and I live at 5133 Mape Drive in Holly Springs.
Questions? The applicant?
What is the applicant recently purchased that property? I believe?
Yes.
What is their intention?
Residential, to build a house for
Build
themselves.
a house?
Yeah.
One or several, or do you know?
I don't know yet, but like basically it's a house for his residence. I know that we discussed some more options of like if we're going to do development, but I think with what the cost will be for that, it will be one like a residential, home. But we're not like 100% sure if it's going to be one or more, but I don't think it's going to be more than one so far.
Other questions, the applicant? We good? Good? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final, further discussion? Anything else? Ready? All right, let's go to motions.
Motion to accept the statement of compatibility listed in agenda packets as true.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Number 2.
Motion to adopt ordinance 18-REZ-06 to change the zoning of 204 Holly Springs Road from LB Local Business Limited to R8 Residential.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you all. Agenda item 7B, public hearing 18 SEU 06, 18 DP 06, 18 WAV 13 HS, Complete Auto Service. Matt, you're back.
All right, thank you. So I received word this morning that the applicant has requested to continue public hearing to the October 16th meeting to allow them time to have some, I guess, internal business discussions. Didn't really receive any information beyond that. But since it was advertised, we do have to open public hearing. I'm prepared to present the rest of the petition if you would like. Otherwise, fine handling it next month if you prefer.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I think next month would be fine.
Next month?
To package it all together.
We're good for next month.
Nobody
Okay.
nobody signed up for public hearing, so we could wait.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would check that, yeah. So actually, we're opening and continuing. Here's the motion. Somebody want to make it, please?
Motion to continue the public hearing to the October 16th, 2018 council meeting at the request of the applicant.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Matt. Don't leave. Agenda item 7C, public hearing 18 REZ 07, 12136 Holly Springs, New Hill Road. Again, Matt.
All right, thank you. So the second rezoning petition of the night is taking a property from the old Finisterra PUD that originally created what 12 Oaks is, and going to R10 conditional use residential. Again, you will first consider the request based on staff presentation. You will then hold public hearing and then make motions to approve, deny, or table the two motions regarding statements of compatibility and changing the zoning of the property. So as stated, the property is part of what was the original 12 Oaks area. When 12 Oaks was formed, it left this section out. The PUD, original Finisterra PUD, has since expired, so there is essentially no functional zoning on the property currently. It is adjacent to the Addison Pond subdivision, Trinity Creek subdivision, and 12 Oaks subdivisions. The request is to modify the zoning of 26.74 acres from PUD to R10 conditional use rezoning. Adjacent properties are zoned PUD R10 conditional use, and R30. The property is designated as residential outside of any community growth areas on the comprehensive plan. The applicant has offered a number of conditions.
Time out. Time in.
The applicant's offered a number of conditions, the first being related to the architecture of the residential structures. They will be adopting the current development options, architecture requirements for front and side and rear facades where they apply. Additionally, they will be prohibiting vinyl siding, as well as some other development standards, raised foundation, varied color palettes, front porches. They've agreed to preserve trees per our new tree preservation ordinance, as well as paying fees per the town fee schedules, performing all right-of-way dedication and road improvements, as well as a fee in lieu for the signal at Green Oaks Parkway and New Hill Road, proportionate to the impact of the development. And I will call Rachel up to go over some of the engineering questions.
Welcome back, Rachel.
All right, so with this rezoning, any project on the site will be required to connect to municipal water and sewer. Any additional utility studies and evaluations that would be required would be determined at the time of development plan. The project will also be required to improve, as Matt stated, adjacent public streets, so road widening across their frontage to our public standards outlined in the town's engineering, design, and construction standards and the comprehensive transportation plan. It was determined that this project did not meet the threshold for a full traffic impact analysis. However, they will be responsible, as Matt stated earlier, as part of their conditions for a fee in lieu of the traffic signal here at Green Oaks Parkway and New Hill Road. And the project site will also be responsible for meeting the town's MPDES Phase 2 post-construction stormwater ordinance and any applicable requirements in this stream basin. Do you have any additional questions?
Questions or comments? Looks like you got it.
Okay.
Thank you
All right.
again.
Thank you.
Matt, you back?
And at this point, we'll have our planning board representative, Van Crandall, come up to run through their discussion items.
Okay.
So there were actually a number of items that came up in discussion at the planning board. The first, I'll just go through the items that are on the agenda. Why a transportation impact analysis was not triggered by the proposed rezoning, and whether or not our thresholds for triggering a TIA are too high. So just doing some rough calculations with the property footprint of 26.74 acres, there would be a potential gross yield of 86.9 units. There was mention is mentioned in the packet that some nearby residential developments, because the property is presumably not suitable for that density, some nearby developments with similar topology resulted in yields of 2.17 units per acre and 1.84 units per acre. So at 2.17 units per acre, it was a yield of 58 58 units per acre for this site. And at 1.84 would yield 49.2 units for the site. So another question that came up pertaining to traffic or transportation was the site's proximity to the Sharon Harris Power Plant and evacuation routes in case an evacuation was necessary. So traffic would have to travel east. Traveling west in the event of an evacuation really isn't doable because you're headed towards the power plant, essentially. So this property, as I calculated it, was like 4.5 miles from the actual reactor site. Question came up as to why these two parcels were not included in the 12 Oaks plan originally, why they were dropped, and an answer was not available at the meeting. And that was really the extent of the discussion that took place. Well, there was a few more with regards to road alignments on Holly Springs New Hill Road. And the difference between roadway improvements versus residential versus commercial development on the site. I don't recall the specifics of that discussion. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments, Van?
I have one. Did the power lines come up at all on the property?
There are power lines there, but they did not come up in discussion. Yes, there are power lines here as well.
And the final vote was 7-1-1, correct?
That's correct. I voted in opposition.
Okay.
When we're doing rezoning, especially for residential, considering our commercial residential balance these days, I'd like to have a good understanding of what's going to be paid for by taxpayers versus the project itself.
Okay.
And some of those things were not clear to me. So.
Okay.
And I know some of those things come up in the actual plan discussion, the site plan discussion, but it's nice to know what the costs to taxpayers will be before, in my opinion, before rezoning occurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Van.
Go ahead, Matt.
If you have any more questions for me.
More questions of Matt before we open the public hearing?
Actually, to Rachel. In reference to the TIA, typically what we're doing, and we've done most recently, is TIA is requested. Just curious why this project wasn't.
So they had a total daily vehicle count of 515. Our typical threshold that triggers a full study is more in line with about 1,000 to 1,500.
Okay.
And just give you an idea, their peak AM trips were 45 in AM, and then peak PM was 55 trips. So they will still be required to widen across their frontage and meet that typical requirement. And then the additional fee and lieu for the signal there at the intersection with Green Oaks Parkway will be implemented.
So you've calculated about 500 cars, and typically a TIA, for that type of
At least-
request is 1,000?
Right, around that, I think. Kendra could confirm
Thank you.
that.
How does the town avoid scenarios where we would have a number of rezonings like this that fall under the TIA, but when added together, would constitute very high volume of traffic.
I think, well, the purpose of having each project submit the basic trip generation information is so that we can look at it more holistically. If we know that there's a certain hotspot where there are higher volumes and that we're kind of on the threshold of needing a little more stringent analysis, then that's a decision that we make internally, and the Director of Engineering is a part of that decision.
Okay.
Other questions of Rachel while she's up? Nope, seeing none. Thank you again,
All
Rachel.
right, thank you.
Any further questions of Matt before we open the public hearing?
Not yet.
Well, in this case, we'll open and close the public hearing since no one signed up. Any further discussion?
Do we have anything from the applicant on this?
That's next.
Yeah, they're going to do a presentation, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think they've
You want
prepared
the
a
applicant
few
to come up?
words, yes.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's John Frazier with FLM Engineering, and I'm representing the property owner and the developer in the case. And I'll just follow up briefly on what Matt and Rachel, Mr. Crandall, had mentioned, and then I believe the developer, Sean Smith, will speak briefly, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As Matt mentioned, the 27 acres here on Holly Springs New Hill Road really currently has no zoning. It's an expired PUD. So we proposed a zoning that we felt was compatible with the area, in R10 conditional district. As Matt mentioned, the adjacent Addison Pond subdivision is zoned R10. We really view this as a continuation, extension of that subdivision. We tie into their infrastructure. The lots would likely be very compatible to what we'd see there. The other developed properties in the area are 12 Oaks to the north. And again, those parcels, the lots in 12 Oaks would be a similar product to what we'd see in this developed property. And 12 Oaks is actually buffered by a sliver of Duke Energy property and 12 Oaks HOA property, so that really no 12 Oaks lot is closer than 85 feet to this property. So there's a nice buffer there for those homeowners. And the other properties adjacent are generally large undeveloped tracts. And we've provided zoning conditions that we felt would provide a certain architectural and design standard for the development as well. And in addition to that, we agreed with the condition to participate with the fee in lieu for the signal at Green Oaks Parkway and New Hill Road. So through the process, we agreed and accepted staff's recommendations on the conditions. We actually did not have any neighbor questions, concerns throughout the process. We didn't have any attendance at the neighborhood meeting. We did have a phone call prior to the neighborhood meeting from a resident in 12 Oaks, just asking how close his house may be to any houses on this property. I was actually able to explain to him over the phone that his house is, again, buffered by 12 Oaks HOA property, so that his property line is about 100 feet from this subject property line, so his house would probably be even further than that. And he was satisfied with that answer, and I put him in touch with the developer, and we didn't hear any additional questions or concerns throughout the process. And then, as Mr. Crandall mentioned at the planning board, there were a few questions related to traffic, why a traffic study wasn't required. We noted at the planning board meeting that we based the trip generation numbers on 2 dwelling units per acre. Again, that's similar to what the surrounding properties have been able to develop, and we felt that that was reasonable for ours, so we don't expect the development to exceed 2 dwelling units per acre. And we're actually willing to offer a condition that caps the density at 2 units per acre tonight as well. But with all that said, even though the trip generation numbers were low, we felt that it was appropriate to agree to the fee in lieu for the signal at Green Oaks Parkway. And we viewed that as a way, again, that we didn't trip the threshold for the study, but we understand we're contributing traffic to the network, and we felt that was a reasonable request to participate in that fee in lieu for the signal. In addition, we're widening along the frontage and providing some other benefits to the transportation network in that way. And in regards to just tying into other utilities, we understand that public water is in Holly Springs New Hill Road, and that public sewer and water will be extended to the property through the Addison Pond development. So we'll tie into those and do the necessary studies during the development plan process for connection to those utilities. So that's really the points that I wanted to hit on. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I know Mr. Sean Smith wanted to speak briefly as well.
Questions before?
I have questions with regard to the power lines and the area that's used for power lines and density. I don't know if I should be asking planning for that or the developer.
Well, we do understand that there's a 180-foot power easement on the property, and we understand that will have to be accommodated with the development plan for the property. But we haven't, understand this is the first step to get to that point. We haven't done much more than, understand that at this point.
Is that part of the, it's obviously part of the 26.74 acres. Is that part of the calculation for density, is using the power, or is that taken out, the area for the power line?
The density, it's part of the calculation for density, the whole property area.
Okay. So how much area is going to be taken out for the power line? How does that change the net? Do you know what I'm trying to figure out, is if you have
I
the power
think,
line and remove it?
The 2.0 he was referring to would be the gross density based on the 26.7 acres. And so we don't know exactly what developable land there is exactly, but it would not, overall density would not exceed 2.0.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else for this applicant? If not, someone else wants to speak, am I correct?
Yes,
Please.
thank you.
Have him come up. And again, name and address, please. Hi.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. My name is Sean Smith. I live at 1138 Bexley Hills Bend in Apex. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody, all of the council members, for meeting with us personally prior to this meeting. I think those meetings are very beneficial for both you and for us, the applicants. So huge thank you there. We did speak beforehand, wanted to make that additional condition of less than 2 units per acre. We've gotten a little bit further along in our analysis and are very comfortable with that number at this point. But ultimately, also wanted to just kind of point out that we plan to do above and beyond the tree save, the new tree save measures that have been put in place recently, very similar to what I've done at my Hemlock Preserve project over on Bass Lake, where we'll do only stage grading, we'll only clear right-of-ways and BMPs, and so really just a concerted effort to preserve as many trees as possible on that site. The site is contiguous with the Addison Pond site, and we're working very closely with that builder that's finishing that out also to add an amenity. Where they're not currently able to have an amenity, we have a small portion, a small parcel that we can add and then work together with them to add an amenity to that community. So I think there's some added value there as well. But also, if anybody has questions for me, I would be more than happy to answer.
Questions? I think we're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yep, thanks.
Any additional questions?
So I think we're at the further discussion point. Anything else?
Matt, the condition for 2 units per acre that was mentioned was not in the listed conditions. Was that something agreed upon?
This was
to be
the
additional, or is that
first I've heard of it.
Okay, so we shouldn't. It's not in the application, right? It's just hypothetically the development plan would.
If they're volunteering it,
You have to advertise it, yeah.
Yeah.
An advertised condition, and. So
yeah, that would probably
ignore
mean
it.
tabling it
Yeah.
and re-advertising and coming back and adding it.
It's like telling the jury disregard that last statement.
I'm saying if they want to sell this land, the condition is just a wish, but it's not attached to that property, so somebody else could buy it, and we won't have the 2 acres per unit.
So what's the recommendation for tonight, Counselor?
So, real quick, had point of clarification that if we are making it more restrictive, theoretically, we don't have to re-advertise it because you're placing additional restrictions against the property.
I'm not
And we-
100% sure it's a offer of the applicant.
Okay.
To limit to 2 units an acre. So, you know, I think if the council wants to limit it to 2 units per acre, then there's a question also of, is that per acre based on gross density or net density, inclusive of the power line easement, exclusive of the power line easement? There are a lot of unknowns. You know, I would think that you'd need to table it if that's where you're at. If you are trusting the applicant in his representations, that I guess that's one thing, but as Councilwoman Kelly said, he could sell it tomorrow and sell it to the next person that doesn't do all the things. You know, he's only required to do the things in the listed offered conditions in the conditional use. Which, Matt, if you might want to run through them again, exactly what the offered conditions are.
Sure.
Vinyl siding, no vinyl siding.
Yeah.
Those types of things.
Yeah, so the first was just to meet the development options architecture requirements. So that's all of our development options subdivisions have each home has to meet certain architectural requirements for their front facade. As well, all properties that have a side or rear facade adjacent to an open space or right-of-way would have to meet architectural requirements in those faces. Prohibition of vinyl siding, building all homes on a crawl space, raised foundation, kind of raise the building up a little bit from the street, a varied color palette, front porches, minimum of 6 feet deep, tree preservation, payment of all fees, dedication and construction of streets and right-of-way, and the fee in lieu for the traffic signal.
So you need to consider the worst-case scenario of density for an R10, which is 10,000 square foot lots. So 20 whatever acres divided by 10,000 gives you the absolute number that you could possibly have. If you're comfortable with that, you should go forward. If you're not comfortable and you're saying that you can only be comfortable with the rezoning of a certain number of homes on this tract of land, then you should table it and let the applicant make that condition and bring it back as a advertised and listed condition. Whether or not it's more restrictive or less restrictive from a zoning perspective to have less houses is probably depends on whose position you're in. So, you know, so I would say if you want to have a solid rezoning, you'd need to table it and bring it back if you wanted to limit the number of houses on the tract.
Because of the power line space and gross density versus gross density with the power line, without the power line, and I would like to table it and have a very clear picture of what the zoning is outside of the power line area for the subdivision, because that's really where the houses will be. But that's just me.
Okay.
I asked the question because it was mentioned. I just wasn't clear on if that was being offered or had been offered as a condition that we need to go through the process and come back to it, or if it was just a good faith, this is what we're thinking for the plan. So that's why I asked the question.
Can have
Other
them come
comments?
back up.
How does the rest of you feel?
I feel like we need to dot the i's and cross the t's and get that condition in writing based on counselor's advice.
You saying table? You're saying table?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Jerry, same?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, yes.
Table? Table?
Yeah, let's table it.
Okay.
No.
I mean, I know it was, we talked about it when we had our meetings. We discussed density and things like that, but if council feels better with tabling it and getting it as a written condition. I'm fine with that.
And that seems to be the only issue really that's in question at this point?
For me.
No? Okay. Motion to table.
Somebody needs to make a motion.
Pardon me?
Somebody has to make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to table.
Motion to table until next meeting, is that what?
Can we do it next meeting, Matt?
Yes, you
That's
could do
not
the next
changed.
meeting.
Okay, October 2nd.
If we don't have to re-advertise it, then yes, you could do next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so motion to table until October 2nd meeting.
Second. Motion been made.
So,
No?
Hold up.
Oh, the public.
I'm holding.
probably does need to be re-advertised with the new stated condition.
It does or does not?
Does.
And how long is that?
Once a week for 10 days.
October 16th would be the meeting after that.
Is that long enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, motion to table until the October 16th meeting?
Second.
Motion been made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're tabling it till October 16th. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Agenda item 7D, public hearing 18 SCU 07/10 DP 06A05 UNC Rex Hospital. Sean, Ryan, and Rachel. Probably.
Most definitely.
Go for it, Sean.
All right, good evening, council. Tonight we have a public hearing for the UNC Rex Hospital. This is a special exception use and development plan, as well as some associated waivers for the project. This is a pretty big project for the town of Holly Springs. It's also a very complex project, so I will do my best to go through kind of a high-level overview of the project. The applicant and their team is here tonight as well, and they will give you a much more detailed overview of their project and also get into the specific details of all their variance requests and waiver requests before you this evening. So this is a quasi-judicial decision. We will hold a public hearing tonight and accept sworn testimony. And then at the end, we will have 4 motions for you to consider for approval, deny, or table, findings of fact, waivers, variances, and then finally the special exception use and development plan. So just to orient everybody to where the proposed property is located, right underneath the arrow here, this is Avent Ferry Road along the north side of the property boundary. This is G.V. Alford 55 bypass along the south side of the property. And this is South Main Street over here underneath the arrow, following down the east side of the property. Currently, there are 2 connected medical office buildings on this property at the corner of Avent Ferry Road and the bypass. It's just to familiarize yourself with the location. The actual hospital site that we'll be talking about tonight is right underneath where it says site on the map. This is our village district area plan on the left-hand side of the screen. The location of the property is right underneath the star, and you can see that this property is designated in our village district area plan as being for mixed use. Our goal is to provide a wide range of commercial, business, and higher density residential uses in this area, as well as introduce land uses that will create demand for other land uses to help us build our downtown village district. The property is currently zoned Office Research and Development Park. Again, it's underneath the star on the screen here. And this zoning district is reserved for areas of town where we would like to see major community employment centers and high-rise office uses. So this is the overall site plan that is being proposed tonight. Just to orient everybody again, this is Avent Ferry Road, right underneath my mouse, the arrow. This is the bypass along the south side, and this is South Main Street over on the east side of the property. And here are the 2 existing medical office buildings at the corner of Avent Ferry Road and the bypass. So as you can see, the proposed new hospital is located in the center of the property, east of the existing medical office buildings. The total square footage is approximately 240,000 square feet, and that is over 7 floors, a basement level, and a penthouse level for mechanical equipment. In total, there are approximately 770 parking spaces, and that is shared amongst the existing medical office buildings and the new proposed hospital. Just to zoom into the specific area where the new hospital is proposed, here's the proposed footprint for the new hospital. Here is South Main Street on the right-hand side of the screen. A new access road will come in. There's an ambulance drop-off area, a service area with loading docks, a central energy facility, an outdoor MRI mobile location, as well as a helicopter landing pad in between the hospital and the central energy facility. This is the proposed open space plan for the project. This project will be required to construct a portion of public greenway along Avent Ferry Road through the property over to South Main Street and then down along their property frontage. They will be providing open space in the form of walkways and outdoor park type area in between the existing medical office building and the new proposed hospital. They will also be required to provide a community focal point. That's something that could be a plaza, a piece of artwork similar to the oak tree artwork that is located on Avent Ferry Road, and that is a requirement of our village district area plan. As far as landscaping requirements for this property, all of the town's landscaping requirements have been met in terms of foundation landscaping, parking lot screening. Probably the most significant landscaping requirements on this property relate to the boundary with the adjacent residential neighborhoods. Our ordinance requires a 75% opaque evergreen type screen along those property lines. So that would be an evergreen tree like a holly or a cedar or a magnolia. 75% of the plants have to be of that evergreen type. The applicant is proposing to do 100% of the species in this buffer as evergreen, just to increase the opacity for the adjacent property owners. It is important to note that this property is not subject to the newly adopted tree preservation ordinance requirements, as this application was submitted before that ordinance took into an effect. So the variances and waivers that the applicant is requesting as they relate to the site plan, like I said, I will run through them just to introduce you to them, and then the applicant's team will go into more detail. The first variance request is to allow for parking areas between the building and the front property lines. So we have parking areas in between the hospital and Avent Ferry Road, the bypass, and South Main Street. Second request is to allow for the parking areas to encroach into the front buffer along the bypass. This variance is specifically for the portion of the property that the existing medical office buildings are located on. Due to the town requiring an additional 20 feet of right-of-way dedication that was not considered at the time that these medical office buildings were approved, that requirement would then make their parking encroaching into our required 50-foot buffer. The third variance is a request to waive the requirement to have an opaque screen gate on the dumpster enclosure area. Waiver request, the town requires that the buffer along the bypass remain undisturbed, and the applicant is requesting to disturb a portion of that buffer as highlighted in red here. The orange portion of that 50-foot buffer is what is proposed to remain as undisturbed. This is the proposed elevation of the hospital building. This would be the front door elevation. And as you can see from this request, it is a 146-foot tall building. So the variance requested for the building height is to exceed the town's 75-foot maximum building height in this zoning district to 146 feet. And there's an additional waiver request to allow for alternate compliance with all of the town's traditional commercial architectural guidelines. With that, I will invite Rachel Jones from engineering up to discuss some of the engineering requirements for this project.
Thank you. Hello again.
All right. So with this project, the water service will be provided with or through a connection to an existing 16-inch water line on South Main Street, and also to an existing 8-inch water line that's internal to the existing medical office building site. Similarly, the existing 8-inch sewer main that's internal to the existing medical office building site will be the connection point for the new hospital addition. With the project, a traffic impact analysis was completed and approved. The recommendations that were identified with that approved study have been incorporated into the plans. And I will go to the next slide. So part of that will include widening along South Main Street across the property frontage and also along Avent Ferry Road to meet the ultimate cross-section of 41-foot back-to-back on 65-foot right-of-way to meet the town's engineering, design, and construction standard requirements and the comprehensive transportation plan. Additionally, with this project, they've provided a conceptual layout for the Pine Avenue extension that will come into Avent Ferry Road, shown here, which they'll be responsible for a fee in lieu proportionate to the project impact for that addition. With the project plans, you'll see also a conceptual layout for the future grade-separated interchange at the bypass and Main Street. All right. Environmentally, they will be required to meet the town's NPDES Phase 2 post-construction stormwater ordinance. And the project is located in the Neuse River Basin, so they will be subject to all applicable requirements of that basin. And then to touch on the waiver that Sean brought to your attention, the request to allow to waive the requirement of taking overhead utilities underground with the project. The waiver was submitted and has been reviewed internally. It was determined by staff that there was insufficient documentation from Duke Energy regarding the feasibility of the requirement. You'll see in your packet that through our internal discussion, it was determined that a fee in lieu for the requirement on Avent Ferry Road would be acceptable. However, staff and the Director of Engineering determined that the Main Street requirement should remain. So kind of summarized, the result of the decision for the waiver and what that would look like. If approved, the requirement for taking overhead utilities underground on South Main Street would be waived. However, the fee in lieu for the requirement on Avent Ferry Road would remain, as it is a condition of approval as stated in your packets. Should the waiver be denied at this time, the requirement to take overhead lines underground on South Main Street would remain, and the fee in lieu for Avent Ferry Road would also remain. So I think we'll take questions at the end. One other item I wanted to add to that the applicant will speak to. Duke Energy has a typical or standard requirement of a minimum of 1,000 feet or a city block to take the overhead utilities underground. So it's a discussion with them as to the feasibility of meeting these requirements for some of the linear footage that doesn't quite meet that standard.
All right, at this time, I'd like to invite our planning board representative, Mr. Crandall, up to discuss the planning board review of this project.
There were a number of items that the planning board discussed at their meeting. And some of these include, as listed, the importance of pedestrian access, such as a footbridge from the proposed project to restaurants, dining, and shopping across Highway 55. So this property spans three of the town's primary main arteries: Main Street, Avent Ferry Road, and the Route 55 bypass. Existing and plentiful retail establishments are directly across the 55 bypass, including dining. However, there is no pedestrian access to those retail establishments. The ability of current fire department equipment to service the facility, there was an item that came up with regards to the maximum reach of the town's ladder truck in relation to the height of the building. So the NC 55 bypass building elevation, and if it was sufficiently attractive, so the building will have pronounced visual impact as viewed from the Highway 55 bypass. And there were some questions as to whether the proposed design as viewed from the Highway 55 bypass is appropriate, and meets the town's expectations. The final item is if the existing stormwater facility would remain and where stormwater would be treated. That was the extent of the discussions, the primary points that were discussed at the planning board meeting. If you have any questions.
Questions?
Did you get answers to any of those? Thinking of the fire department equipment, I believe we discussed that at the budget meeting, and about a truck to reach that. Did you get any answers?
Yes, I believe that there was going to be some elaboration on that this evening with regards to fire service to the building, and I'll let that discussion take place on its own.
Okay. Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant's team up, and they have a detailed presentation for you on this project, and then we can open it up to questions at the end.
Sure. Most of us know you, but remind everybody else who you are and where you live.
Hi, thanks for having us tonight. My name is Leslie Colucci. I work for Perkins & Will Architects. I'm the project manager for the design team for this job. My address, 411 West Chapel Hill Street, Durham. Really lucky to have an IT guy. Thank you.
You better believe it.
Oh, okay. Let me scoot close. So we just have a video. We show this to the planning board. It's kind of a fly around of the project. I think it's a good explanation of what the building looks like overall and sort of what the experience approaching the site would be. It does have some sound, but I may narrate over it. Now, let me see if I can get it. Well, just a second, sorry. Try and open this again.
Magic.
Takes just a second to start here. I had it bumped ahead. Okay, so this is a view approaching the hospital from Main Street. The CEP that you saw and the site plan would be to the left, and the goal of the project is to hide that as much as possible from view. As you drive in, you see the hospital, and then you can see the sort of brick base, the brick pavilion that ties in with the medical office buildings that are existing. This is approach toward the main entry. Again, we have lots of trees, landscaping on site. The main entry there on the corner of the building. As you move around the building, see some signage that indicates the hospital. You can see a stormwater VMP to the right. And then along the back of the building, or the 55 side, you can see the mobile MRI. So we took advantage of the grade to kind of hide that. and then loading dock that connects to the central energy plant that again is tucked down, sort of out of the sight line. You can see the existing MOBs in the distance. This is the main drive, main public entry. And then into the central lobby. Okay. And I'm going to transition to our presentation.
I'm Tom Williams with UNC Rex Healthcare, 4420 Lake Boone Trail, and I have been sworn in. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick overview of the site as well as the hospital and some of the services that we have. The project principles are before you. I think of all of these out here, of course, all of them are important, but the main ones that we try to focus on are, of course, are planning for future expansion, because certainly with Southern Wake County and the growth that we're all experiencing here, we have, through our CON, that we have 50 beds. We also got to plan this appropriately so we can expand for the future as well. I think creating a community of well-being and also promoting general health in the community certainly is important. We have taken input from community forums, much of which you have been able to attend as well, and we appreciate you guys attending that. To date, we've had 18 community forums here in Holly Springs, as well as Fuquay, as well as Angier, and we will continue to have those community forums throughout the project build and continue to have input and provide feedback. Also, we want to create a hospital of the future. We had to plan for efficiency, the technology, and also that continued growth. If you look at our site plan, you guys probably remember initially we were there at the corner of Avent Ferry Road. We opened that up in 2011 in December. The first phase, phase 2, opened up in December of this past year, and that's our 2 medical office buildings. And then we were able to add the approximate 20 acres that you see on the right-hand side of the screen to expand the site out. What that allowed us to do is we could position the hospital and face it on the private street connection between Avent Ferry as well as South Main Street. By adding that, it also gave us 2 more points of access in additional to off of Avent Ferry Road, those 2 points of access being off of South Main Street as well. Also, you can see in this the importance of the community tie-in for the walking trails. Naturally, we want people to utilize this when they're sick, but it certainly should be a place they can come to as well and walk where it's well lit and it's safe. We will also have discussions with the town about the green area that we could do perhaps future farmers market and that sort of type events and gathering place and utilize that for the town as well. This site, by going up 7 stories with the hospital, it allowed us to condense the footprint. It also allows for future growth. You see at the front that faces out, that one arrow, that would be expansion for the emergency department in the future. And then the 3 other arrows that go out toward Highway 55 could be the site for a future tower when that is needed for additional beds. Just for a quick overview of our stacking diagram, level 00 is the building support. We also do sterile processing there. First floor is the entrance, our emergency department. It will be a 24-bay emergency department at opening. We'll provide imaging on that level as well and central registration. Level 2 is our administrative area, also food and nutrition. We'll have inpatient and outpatient pharmacy available. Level 3 is our labor and delivery unit with 2 C-sections, also 7 beds for labor and delivery. Going up a floor, we have our pre- and post-op and surgery center that will have 3 ORs in 1 procedure room. And then on top of that, we have the 2 24-bed patient units that will include med surgery, our postpartum. We'll have 6-bed ICU as well as 6-bed dedicated to pediatrics. And the top floor would be available for future expansion for patient units as well. When we were looking at the context, I remember the first time we came here and we were looking to build the first MOB. And Mayor Sears, I think you said, remember, this is the gateway to downtown. So we took that, and as you see here, we have downtown, we have your law enforcement center, the building we're in here today, and that's where we started out with the building and the design to match that. Now, the thing that we wanted to do, that I think we've been successful with the hospital, is that we did this in 3 phases. The first phase was that 30,000 square foot building that we opened up in December 2011, and then phase 2 we just opened up in December of last year, and then of course phase 3 will be the hospital. We didn't want any new citizen to come in that gets here 2 or 3 years from now and look at this and decide, oh, they did this in 3 phases. We needed this campus to look as one, and I think we've been able to achieve that, and that's one of the things in our context that we wanted to try to do. So Leslie's going to go into more detail.
I can just add on a little bit to the overall design of the project and kind of how we worked with Rex to arrive at the building as it is today. So we started to take a look at Holly Springs, specifically in the community, and to Tom's point, how do you really make this hospital fit into the town and be part of the community, be part of that campus? And we had some inspiration from the Holly Springs logo, this idea of new growth supported by the old growth, and then the spring, the source of wellness, really. So we started to take that and sort of pull it apart and imagine how this building could speak to those very ideas that Holly Springs likes to embody. So we thought of the site really as the spring. You see we have sort of a brick base that nods to the existing architecture on the site and also in Holly Springs. That's really a sign or symbol of the old established community. And then lighter, sort of glassy, patient floors that rise up above, higher in the project, and that sort of new growth, so that lighter green leaf. And that's been a guiding principle, really, from the exterior design all the way through to the interior. This is a view, again, from the approach from Main Street, so you can see how we're trying to create a campus language, campus architecture. This is a view from a little higher up. We have good pedestrian connectivity from the MOB over to the hospital. I don't know if you all have experienced Rex's food, but it's delicious. And so the idea is that everybody would be able to access the servery and the food service there. This is a view from the Avon Ferry entrance, so the existing medical office building entry. You can see the medical office building on the right. This is what it looked like as you come in. And then again, ending in sort of a rendering of what that main 2-story lobby would be. Food service would be sort of up on the mezzanine. Okay. And I'll sort of stop there. We have a very large team of people here who can respond to questions. Let y'all go.
Questions at this point? Oh, by the way, I want to make a comment. Unless I missed it the first time, a lot of this is review. We've seen a lot of this. And Tom, I want to give you personal credit for doing as many, as you call them, public forums. I got to the point where I could say almost what he said. It was all just, oh, never mind. But the helicopter pad and the mobile MRI unit, I think, is incredibly important to this whole project. And I compliment you for that. So questions or comments at this point, and we'll take it further.
This is just more kind of a safety question. Could you go back to the picture where it shows the main entrance and the emergency? Like right here. Good. So people coming in would turn in down the end there by the main entrance?
Yes.
And then if they had to go to the emergency, so it's just one way?
It is just one way. So if you were going to the emergency department, you would drive in this main road. You'd make a left turn. We added extra lanes along this hospital front. So you would pass by the main entry of the hospital and then go to the emergency department entry, and there's a little sort of stacking lane here that lets folks who are dropping off ED patients.
Okay. The first thing I thought of, though, from work, I worked in the ER for 10 years, is when people are excited and they're coming up, I would just worry that they'd hit somebody just walking into the main entrance by crossing that first.
Yeah, so we do have access to the emergency department. There's sort of a concourse. So if you have an emergency and you get out at the front door of the hospital, it's actually not that far to the ED. You can walk inside the building down to the emergency department.
Okay, I just see them either coming in the wrong way on that loop because they're eager, or just coming around that corner, and I just worry about people walking. But I guess we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Signs on the roadway, too. Yeah.
Sure, there'll be a lot of signage.
Yeah. Other questions or comments?
So most of the parking is up front. You know, from the feedback from the planning board, it was those who want to cross over 55 to go to McDonald's. There's other establishments there. From what I tell here, most of the parking is all in the frontage of the hospital, correct? Is there anything in the rear?
There's a parking lot in the rear that is largely intended for staff.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
coworker.
the buffer between 55 and the hospital there, can anyone tell me roughly what we're looking at in terms of the buffer there?
The requirement is a 50-foot undisturbed buffer, and then they requested a waiver to disturb a portion of that buffer and then replant it to our semi-opaque standard.
Okay.
Let me just add to, the site is relatively flat today. Sort of along the center is where it starts to really slope off to the existing BMP. We were able to really take advantage of that to tuck the CEP down low, to tuck the loading dock low from the sight line at 55. It's very helpful. Get some of this parking down.
Do we have a timetable, tentatively speaking, at this point in time? To catch us up to date on that one?
Yes, so the timetable is that we will plan to break ground around January, February of this coming year. It's about a 24-month build that puts us getting our CO roughly around December of 2020, and then that would give us time for our move-in orientations and seeing our first patient around February, March 2021.
2021?
I have a question on handicap parking, because it seems like a lot of the parking is quite a ways from the hospital. Where is the handicap parking?
I can respond to that. We have handicap parking distributed sort of around in this area. We have handicap parking in this area, kind of close to the building. And we're meeting the requirements of that.
You also have plenty over at the MOP too.
Oh, sure, we do, yes.
lot. Good question, but I think
Yeah,
that's
it's a great
pretty well
question.
covered, yeah.
It's important for the hospital.
Absolutely.
Pardon my ignorance here, but the mobile MRI, we have a 240,000 square foot building, and there's nowhere to put that, or is that just to take other places if the one inside goes down?
So when we had our certificate of need, that's what the state allowed, was the mobile MRI. But we will plan in the future for the build and the imaging that we can do a stationary MRI as well.
So the people that are getting MRIs, you're going to wheel them out back into that unit to have that done?
That's correct.
You can get there from inside the building. You go
Okay.
down. So you're not going
Not
outside.
going outside.
Right.
Okay.
You will have to go from the building to the MRI, but that's the only.
And it is a covered area, of course.
Okay.
But our plan in the future is to have stationary inside.
Other questions or comments?
Can someone speak, you're right beside a lot of homes in the residential. Can you speak to the amount of traffic you envision or the sounds that they will hear if I'm living right on Maple Avenue and this is in my backyard?
Yeah, I think certainly if I was living in that area, I'd have the same question. One of the things, of course, with the buffer that is being planned and is required by the town and this council will help alleviate that. I think also the addition of the land that we were able to do allows to spread out the traffic. Keep in mind, this is a 50-bed hospital, so it may be less traffic going in and out than you would have at Chick-fil-A down the street at lunch. But if also, I know we all think about sirens and that sort of thing, but with code, if you're ever around the hospital, it's actually around the hospital where you do not hear the sirens. That's when they're coming and transporting patients, but they go down when they turn in and come into the hospital. So that'll alleviate a lot of that sound as well.
Tom, can you talk about the average stay that a patient would have at this hospital, roughly?
Yeah, so the length of stay, of course, since we are a community hospital, we would probably have a lot of observation patients that would be staying less than 24 hours, but certainly you could have patients that would stay up to 2 or 3 days. Of course, it depends on what they'll be having done and that sort of thing. But I would anticipate the average length of stay being close to 2 to 3 days for your average inpatient. And of course, the labor and delivery as well, and those patients that'll be in and out. And then the outpatient, we'll do outpatient surgeries and some inpatient surgeries. Most of the surgeries that'll be done, if you think about the urology cases, we will do orthopedics, total joints, We can do a lot of general surgeries, that sort of thing. We'll be 24-hour call there, so if you came in with a hot belly and needed an appendectomy in the middle of the night, there would be someone that would take care of that. For the overly complicated cases like vascular cases, cardiac bypass, that sort of thing, we do have a critical care transport truck that'll be there 24/7, and they would be taken back to the main Rex hospital for those type cases and for the more lengthier stays. We also have the helipad there as well for those transports.
Okay, thank you.
What else?
The helipad's on the ground.
Yes.
So with the waiver being asked to put the overhead wires underground, no issues with the helipad, with helicopters coming in, anything like that? Like I know Wake Med built theirs and then had a lot of issues.
None that we know of yet. We do have a helipad consultant on board that's helped plan that space. So we should be good. I don't know what the Wake Med issue ended up being.
Yeah, I don't know either why they built it and then couldn't use it as often as they wanted. But it's always a concern, of course. Okay.
From a pedestrian standpoint, I think you guys have done an excellent job on the site itself, working some greenways in through there, making the site accessible to the public. That's fantastic. My concern is on the Main Street side, how the public gets there. There's 50 to 100 yards of right-of-way left that would get us to Maple Street and allow a full access up to the end of that intersection, cross over, potentially to get our other sidewalk that's on the east side, I think, and then you could get all the way up to downtown to Town Hall. Have you guys investigated acquiring that right-of-way to make that connection?
No, I think you mean just here.
Correct.
Is that correct? No, we haven't. We are providing, all the greenway on the site that's required and doing road expansion, but we haven't moved beyond our site on that section.
I realize it's off-site,
Yeah.
and I think a project like this would designate a good faith effort to go out and see about acquiring that right-of-way, or see if it's possible to have a full stream of pedestrian connectivity, because right now there's nothing there. People are going to be walking from downtown to the hospital, around the campus. You can come into the campus, run through it, get over to Avent Ferry, go up the other side. I just think the more we can promote that connectivity throughout our town, the better. And that would be, I think it would be a really good thing to do, for this project and the sustainability of pedestrian connectivity.
I have questions around, it's not on here, but the wetlands, I guess in the future will be disturbed for the future road work. Is that what that was on some of the other diagrams?
I'm sorry.
In the corner, not on this one, but you saw road, future road.
Future interchange
Future
there.
interchange.
Oh, yes.
So does it come with the easements provided for us for the future road, or what's in place now?
Let me just say a question back so I can make sure I understand. If they build the loop turnaround, how does that impact the wetlands? Is that what you mean?
Well, and what provisions are you saying that you're accepting that the town might have the loop there in the future, that we already have access to that property?
So we were required and provided a sort of concept design for the loopway. And our site had to not impact that. So we couldn't build something that couldn't be altered if that loopway gets built. It's been done all the way to concept, and it hasn't been pushed past that. So I can say that if the town chooses to build that in the future, we wouldn't have to rearrange or do construction on our site to accommodate it. We have no buildings or roadways or anything in that area. And that's largely because of that turn.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
The cafeteria you had mentioned, is that going to be 24/7 pretty much, or?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, it's
Oh, okay.
it'll be a accommodation for all the workers that'll be there 24/7, also providing patient meals as well.
Okay.
Yes, it will.
Great.
Having had the pleasure of using that service in a somewhat past experience there, it's the greatest food in the world.
It's good.
Just love it. I'm not sure I want to go back just for that reason, but when you wake up and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're hungry and you call and say, I'd like to have a hamburger or something like that, and 15, 20 minutes later, you have something there with a vanilla milkshake. It's nice. Thank you for that.
How many employees do you expect to work at the hospital, I guess, over peak period? And how many patients or visitors do you expect on an average day?
So initially, for coworkers, it's about 225 FTEs that we'll be hiring. Those are all new jobs for the community, but those are spread out 24/7 as well. But ultimately, once we do ramp up, it may be a total of about 250 to 275. But again, that's spread out through all the shifts across 7 days. If you have full capacity, if you had 50 patients in as well as visitors coming in and out, you would double that. But that kind of gives you a rough estimate. Typically most census, when you're looking at even those 50 beds, you would accommodate about 80 to 85% census on any given day. When we were looking at the projections about year 3, that's had us at about 85% of those 50 beds.
All right. Any other questions or comments at this point?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'll open public hearing, and I have one person. I want to make sure I got this name right. James Adams. James Adams, am I correct? I'm sorry?
Yeah, there's.
And you're going to add somebody?
Oh, here he comes. Okay.
Okay.
Say again? Swear him in. What's his name? How do you do, sir? Just for the record, please, your name and address, and speak into the mic if you would.
My name is James Adams, and I live
And
at
right.
113 West Maple Avenue. I just have a couple of 3 questions I would
Sure.
love to ask. This road on Maple Street, I live at 113. It is going to eventually lead from Hollow Spring Road going all the way through to Avis Ferry.
He's not. Is it going, you're wondering, I'm sorry, what was the question, sir?
That's right, got it.
Was it going from Hollow Springs Road all the way through Maple Avenue over to Avis Ferry to the hospital?
No.
I don't
No.
think so.
It won't.
No, if you bring that up, Maple stops at the property.
Right.
It stops at the property
Yeah.
So,
on Maple. It
no.
stops.
Yeah, it stops inside there's like that jet, the Maple Avenue stops there.
Maple Avenue ain't gonna extend to the hospital.
It'll be in the hospital grounds.
It'll parallel to
If
it.
you want to bring the PowerPoint back up.
You want to bring that,
Yeah,
the
bring the
map,
map
yeah.
back up. 'Cause it's a good question.
it's probably on the applicant's presentation. Oh,
There we go.
there we go.
There it is.
That's not the, does that
That's
show
not the
for
one.
now?
Yeah, there's Maple Avenue
Right,
right,
that
Right.
was
So
long.
what was your question?
right there.
Yep.
Maple Avenue is here.
Yeah, from Hollow Spring Road going through Maple Avenue to the hospital.
It's
Okay, Holly Springs Road.
not cutting through.
Main Street.
That doesn't cut through, yeah.
Main Street.
Does not cut through,
Main Street.
right?
Doesn't cut through, but Maple goes to the hospital.
It's kind of parallel
Right.
to it.
Parallel,
so-
yeah.
It doesn't, it's not
It's not gonna- So that's what he's wondering, if
A connection to Main Street to Avon Ferry. Are you looking at was it this connection, the Pine Avenue realignment?
I
That'll
think
con-
down here
that-
at Maple.
Maple is below.
Down at the bottom,
Right,
He-
so
I
this
think he's
will
wondering,
not
can he drive
extend.
down Maple and get to the hospital?
Okay. So, so no, there will not be a connection through Maple Avenue to get to the hospital. You'd have to go out to South Main Street
You're
and
right.
come down to this main entrance.
You're close.
Maple Avenue always stop where it stops at now.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
you're close.
So it can't be used as a cut through. People won't come cutting through down Maple Avenue.
Right.
Will Maple Avenue ever be standing open, wider? It'll be the same.
I think it'll be the same.
You would have to come out of your street and make a right onto Main, and there'll be an entrance there.
I make a right to Main Street,
Right.
and make a left, I go down to
It's about a block or so.
Locker Soul, and it stops there.
Yes, sir.
That's my true answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. I understand there's someone who wants to ask some questions. Am I correct? You've been sworn in, is that correct? Yes. All right, please, again, your name and address.
My name is David Prince, and my property is at 713 Utley Street. And my question is about, I didn't get the opportunity to attend any of the community forums, and so I didn't get a notice. However, I just want to know how many families will be affected. Will there be any displacement of families in the neighborhood of Pine, Maple, Utley, Hickory, Cotton Street? Because that's a community that's been there, sitting there 60 years, and now we're going to adjust to what the hospital is doing. So my question is to Rex and to the town, will there be any displacement of families?
I won't tell you, I've not
We
heard
weren't
that.
made aware of, you mean of them taking over any property or anything?
So the hospital is going to be built in the middle of this community with the noise and the traffic and the ambulances and all of that going on.
That's correct.
Well, Phase 3, if you look at it, Phase 3, there's already Phase 1 and 2, and Phase 3 would be that to the right where it says site on there. So Phase 1 and 2 has already been completed.
They're there.
Right.
And then Phase 3 would be where it says site there. So that's where they're going to develop, where the soccer fields are,
Right.
right there.
So that's right behind our property. So 7 floors are going to go up, and 240,000 square feet are going to go in walking distance of my home, of our community, right? So that's our issue. I think that we at 713 Utley Street never received anything about the community forum, so I think we could have had some questions asked during that time. But we're going to get ready to have a giant hospital built here in our little small community, correct?
And widening of South Main Street, at what point are you widening South Main Street?
Okay.
Now, we're not, we need a hospital, yes, everybody needs one. But then we have to think about the people who are going to be affected by this, and we're poor, and we live in this neighborhood. And I don't think it appears that we have not had a say in any of the planning and any of that. Correct?
Okay. Point well taken. Thank you.
Have we had, with the community forums and the
We have
invitation-
had
how-
18.
We did have some, I did reach out to Ham Womble and some.
Why was there that night with you?
There was not a letter to come to 713 Utley Street out of any other streets about a community forum about Rex Hospital.
Okay.
And this has been going on for several years now. We've always heard about it, but we have not been officially notified until tonight.
Okay. So noted.
Public hearing, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so noted, thank you. What now? Because this is going to proceed, I'll assume.
It's
The video, none of the residents were included in the landscape of the hospital, just trees and vacant spaces.
We didn't recognize any of that, but it's in walking distance of all of our homes.
Thank you.
Tom. Mr. Williams?
About the hospital than you did about the surrounding neighborhood around the hospital.
Mr. Williams, just a quick question. In terms of the height, from my understanding, it's not going to be 7 stories from the ground. You're actually going to be several stories within the ground, so it's not 7 stories high, so maybe 4 stories high. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's still 7 stories on top of the ground floor. You have level 0 and then 7. It's
But it's, you say.
But it settles down.
the basement.
Can someone speak to the buffer area between the hospital and the neighborhood, so to give them an idea of what they're going to experience?
So to address the height question first, so this is 7 stories, and this is what faces, this is the north facade. So this faces the properties directly to the north that the resident was just up here speaking about. So this is what will face the properties that are along Maple Avenue, this elevation here, and this is 7 stories with the penthouse on top. On the other side of the building, there is a lower level basement, and that is only 1 level. So the majority of the building is at 7 stories from this advantage. As far as the buffer along the adjacent properties, it is a type C75 buffer. So what that means is we require every 100 feet, 75 points worth of plant material. A 12-foot evergreen tree gets you 8 points. So it's kind of hard to explain without having a visual here, but it is a 100% solid evergreen, predominantly 12 foot high at time of planting. Many of the species that the applicant has proposed do grow to anywhere from 30 to 50 feet in height at maturity. That's not what it will be planted at, so that will not be the effect of that landscape buffer at time of planting.
So, but it'll be minimum 12 feet at time of planting.
Most of the plant species that they have put on these plans are anywhere between 8 and 12 feet at time of planting.
And how wide is that buffer?
It is a 50-foot wide buffer on this side here. This is an unopened roadway. It's Wilbur Road here. Along the residential lots that face Maple Avenue, it is a 30-foot buffer. So 30 feet in width.
So we have a wider buffer along where there's no residential homes.
Yes, that's because there is an unopened right-of-way located right here. So it is a street, but it is not a street that you can drive on. So our setback requirement is 50 feet along a street frontage and 30 feet along any other property line. So that is the difference between those two buffers.
What is the buffer there now with the existing medical building between that neighborhood and that area?
The existing medical buildings are not on properties that touch the existing residential neighborhood here. The existing medical buildings are on this property. So the hospital is expanding to this property under my mouse here, 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 and here. This property that is currently where my mouse is the existing medical office building, and that does not border the existing residential neighborhood.
So there is no buffer now where there will be a buffer coming, is that correct?
There may be some existing vegetation that is providing a buffer for those residents.
Next to the soccer, like at the end of the soccer fields?
Yes.
There's a little bit.
But it'll be more.
There'll be more.
Yeah.
They will be removing trees in some of these areas and replanting to our opaque buffer standards.
Other questions or comments?
Sean, I have one comment on the variance for height. Our UDO is 75 feet right now.
Correct.
In your professional opinion, why does our UDO have a requirement of 75 feet? Is that just the town's desire and we make that requirement, or is there other architectural standards or anything else in town that we would have a UDO requirement like that?
Just a second.
picked a number?
Yeah, it was just picked.
Okay.
Just to give you some reference, we did, before this went to TRC a year ago, I think we looked at some existing building heights in Holly Springs just to get some reference points. Don't quote me on these numbers because I'm just trying to remember them. Securus is about 124 to 130 feet in height at the tallest point. You can't really see it because it's behind that buffer along Green Oaks Parkway. And Kendra, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I believe the Lee Street Water Tower is also around 120 feet. So just to give you some reference, they're asking for 142 feet. If you think about the Lee Street Water Tower, that's 120, so about 20 feet taller than the Lee Street Water Tower.
Thanks.
Okay.
During construction, is there anything that will be done to help keep the neighborhoods from being disturbed too much from construction? Like when is the buffer the first, like one of the first things that they do, or later on? How can we help minimize the impact on that
So
neighborhood?
probably bring the applicant back up to address that. I am not familiar with how they plan on staging the construction.
Tom, you want
of
to come
this
back
site.
up on that one, please? Tom?
And Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, I've just been informed there are a few additional residents who have inquired to speak as well, so just a heads up that I think Ms. Harper may be providing that list.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll field the construction question, though I'm not a contractor. First step on site will be grading. There is some grading that does need to be done. And again, a lot of effort was given to putting like the unsightly areas of the hospital lower so that it's not visible from the main street level. So that grading work will take place first. Likely planting will happen towards the end of the project in a typical construction project to avoid any landscaping damage through construction. We haven't talked as a team about staging it in any way differently than would be typical, but that could be something.
Okay. While they're up here, any further questions of the two applicants here? No? Okay, I understand there's some other people wanting to speak. I'm sorry?
Right now, we're not in favor, the neighborhood. That's all I have to say.
Okay. You'd also come up and please state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Claudia Cofield at 5636 Eastern Street, but I also own property on Hickory Avenue. I know that we had anticipated the hospital coming, but we didn't know what size, and it concerns me that you're saying that you're going to widen South Main Street, and I don't know, I can't visualize where the point of access is going to the hospital as was portrayed in the video. So I want to know how wide, are you talking multiple lanes? And how much property is that gonna take to widen it so that you can have an entranceway off of South Main Street? And what point is that entrance?
Who would like to tackle that one?
Okay.
I gotta go over here. Hold on just a second.
There you are.
So I think the question is along the South Main Street area, is that right?
Right.
So the hospital is following, I think, the UDO requirements for the widening of Main Street. This project includes widening only on this property's boundary. So this line here, this black line here.
But this is South Main.
Correct, yep. So we will widen from half of Main Street over onto the Rex Hospital property. That's it.
Okay, where is the distance from, because it was just widened to go to the bypass. So from that point, where is the widening going to take place?
To the edge of the Rex property. It won't go past that property line.
Do you have a number, a house number, or road number? What street?
There's no.
It looks like it's right before,
This is Maple here.
right, there's Maple, and it looks like it's going right.
So it looks like there's a residential property here.
Right.
And that property will not be disturbed with this project.
So that entrance, is that entrance like, it's already like a road, like a service road that goes back in there? Is that the same road?
So that one, this will be new, so you can get to the hospital. And that's not a service road, that's intended to be kind of like a, I don't know, I would say more like a boulevard with trees to feel nice. That's a goal, that it feels like a nice street.
So this pond, where's this pond coming from?
This pond is existing. You actually really can't see it because the grade there drops so significantly. So we're actually not touching this pond at all. It's there today. Yeah.
So this is Maple up here. You're gonna come down here. I still don't,
There's a house there,
yeah.
right across the street from that last house. There's the barber shop, and then there's a house
The
right
barber
next,
shop
right
and a
next to
house.
it. Right across
Next
the
to it.
street from the house is where that
Uh-huh.
entrance road will be.
Okay, so you won't be disturbing any of the residential areas across the street or beyond that point?
That's
Right,
my
not with this project. And I will actually say, since I'm sort of speaking on behalf of the hospital, there was that existing right-of-way that they chose not to develop, just to hold that buffer and not disturb the community.
I guess that answers my question, but I still don't see how it's gonna be a boulevard going into that area to look like that now. But I'm gonna look at it a little bit closer when I go by there tomorrow and let you know. Because we have some, I just want to know how many houses would be affected by the widening of the street, and you still haven't told me how many lanes. You just said what is required. So how many lanes is that? You don't have a turning lane there.
Rachel, did you want to handle that?
Are we sworn in, kind sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ronald Stevenson with Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place in Raleigh. And there won't be any additional through travel lanes there'll be more pavement, but there won't be any additional through travel lanes. We're not going to widen that road to have multiple lanes in each direction. There is widening required, though, to sort of set it up for widening at some point in the future, probably when other property develops or whatnot. So we're just kind of setting that up while we're developing the property now, while we're building. We're just kind of setting that edge. And all the access points to the property have to be approved by the NCDOT and by the town. So they all have been approved, and there are turn lanes and various things that may be required at those driveway entrances to help get the traffic, keep the traffic to turning in there from blocking the through lane, to keep people from being able to stopping and not being able to get by them when they're waiting to turn in. So, yes, ma'am.
Would that be, consist of a curve, and then, like someone already asked, where you gonna put sidewalking up on that side of the street?
Well, I think what we heard is that the current plans do not show the sidewalk there at that location.
We don't have it in the project right now. I think that was just tonight.
No, it was a comment, yeah.
Well, this is one, and this is one of the reasons that it was suggested, is for residents that live nearby, that live downtown, to have that walkability right there. I mean, it's right in their the hospital's right in their backyard. You don't want them to have to walk in traffic or cut through, trees to get to it.
And someone also brought up, the planning board, I served on the planning board for 10 years here before you. But, he recommended that you consider putting a crosswalk, I don't know whoever job that is. To consider putting a crosswalk over so residents can walk over all that traffic.
I can talk to that point for a minute. This goes back about 10 or 12 years we've been working on this. And what we found out is we talked about putting a tunnel underneath 55 bypass. We talked about a bridge putting over it. The costs are extremely excessive. It's way beyond anything that we could even afford. So we're going to have to rely on the food in the hospital.
Mayor,
we
you could put the ball field down Main Street. You could afford to put a crosswalk over on UNC bypass.
You can't. I'm sorry. I mean, you can, but you can't.
did.
It's $30 or $40 million.
You said it did, okay. You said it did, but it happened, didn't it?
Well,
'Cause you
some
wanted
things
it
do
to
happen. Yeah, sometimes. Not in this case. Sorry.
You've got grants and all kinds of money to make that happen.
I wish.
Just putting it out there.
I hear you.
I think the NCDOT won't allow just a straight-up crosswalk across the bypass at that point.
Of course not.
But at some point, there is a interchange planned for there. And correct me if I'm wrong, when that interchange is constructed, it will have a crosswalk over it.
Down the road.
To South Park.
The interchange will have, South Main will go up and over the bypass, and there will be a sidewalk over, on the bridge.
How many years do you see that away, Kendra?
That is currently unfunded on the TIP.
Okay. Good. I stand corrected.
Can anybody speak to how much volume of traffic you think will come from Main Street versus Avid Ferry?
We know it's gonna be a lot of traffic at the hospital. We have been in hospitals, Lake Med, Rex, we go to all of them. But we know there's a lot of traffic. We are just left out, and we're the community. And we're gonna build this giant hospital right in our backyard, the front yard, with no consultation from us at all. So what we are gonna have to do is to either stop the hospital or revive all our properties.
All right. Thank you. We through?
But we're not encroaching on their properties at all.
That's correct.
I mean,
That property was not going to 12 Oaks. That property, that hospital was not going any other subdivision in Holly Springs. We put it right in our community, and we're upset about it.
I think it was looked at more as where the gateway is, but Tom, I can ask, what about is there any opportunity for, when you're looking at that buffer, I don't know if there's opportunity to increase it or to look at the vegetation that's going to go there to make it more of a screening?
So vegetation will stop the sirens and traffic and.
I guess, I don't know what else. I'm just trying to offer some suggestions right now.
We'll have to go home and think about it.
Last call. Okay. Tom, go ahead.
Mayor, I would welcome the opportunity to meet with this group again.
Sure.
So, regardless, as we move forward, I would like to do that and have as many meetings as we want to, so we can talk about the services, how you benefit from the hospital. But certainly you can serve and have every right to have you want to serve, and I'm glad we'll plan.
I'd like to suggest you do that over there, just like we've done the other forums at the, on site.
You did it over
Okay?
there.
At this point in time, I think we will, unless there's objection, we'll close the public hearing and continue to talk about further discussion. Let's hang.
If there's anything they can do to do the buffer sooner and try to minimize, that would help.
There were
two. I think so. And at the,
No, you can't.
but I understand. I mean, if they weren't directly mailed and
But
They were
it's
at-
it's not going to work. That's not going to be appropriate.
but anything we can do to minimize and then make sure that we, would be great.
It's not the first time.
If you have any additional questions for staff, we'd be
Anything
happy
left?
to answer them.
One quick question. The town did recently enact a noise ordinance. Would this have any impact on the hospital or noise from the hospital, or would there be any?
So sirens would be exempt, but as the applicant testified under sworn testimony, that they turn them off as they get to the hospital.
Right.
You know, so,
I mean, unless there's traffic, and I know from experience, unless there's traffic completely blocking it and they're trying to get through, they'll come in with lights on. And
That's all.
that's only usually if it's a code, if it's an emergent
Right.
situation. But sirens, unless
And-
it's major,
Would there be any other noise emitted from the hospital, AC units or anything that would potentially rise above our noise ordinance level?
I would defer that question to the applicant. We also have our fire chief and police chief here if you have any specific questions for them that they may be able to answer. But as far as noise, I would ask the applicant to come back up and address that.
First, I'll just say that the sirens would turn off on Main Street, which is pretty typical practice when the ambulance gets close to the hospital. The other source of noise that would likely not exceed the noise ordinance volume would be from the central energy plant. So there are generators in the central energy plant. Those do have to be tested, or if they kick on in the event of an emergency, those do make noise. But they would likely not be loud enough for the noise ordinance. And again, I just want to reiterate that we really have made a big effort to keep that stuff out of the sight line and also down to limit that noise even further.
Any idea how many helipad trips you potentially would anticipate?
I don't know if, do you know that number, Tom? No, so just, yeah, so just one point to note that helipad or helicopters would be coming and taking patients out in the event that they were in need of transport to higher acuity.
yeah, it's not, it wouldn't be often with a 50-bed.
Right, like this is not a high acuity hospital, so people would not be helicoptered in here, they would be going out.
Trauma unit.
Right.
Yeah, we're not trauma.
I don't know if that makes a difference one way or the other, but again, it's hard to know. Another point, we're 20 minutes from the Rex main campus, so likely a helicopter transport at that distance is not necessary. So the helicopter would come in play maybe to go to Chapel Hill or to go to Duke or some trip that did not make sense via car or ambulance or vehicle.
You'll have your occasional practice run, but probably wouldn't be that often.
Can I ask you questions about the main entrance? So are you considering the main entrance off of Main Street or Avid Ferry?
Oh man, that's like $1 million question.
Because I think that's part of the
Their concern,
if Avid
right?
Ferry was more the main entrance, then more the traffic will be there. It would feel farther from the residents versus Main Street. So I'm just wondering how that.
So I think, and again, y'all jump in if you want to. The hospital address is Main Street. And if you look at the big picture plan for Holly Springs, the realignment of Avon Ferry Road, Avon Ferry sort of becomes more secondary, really, than Main Street. And so I think the idea then would be that, Main Street would be, sort of a main entrance to the hospital. It's a little bit difficult even for us in site design and planning. We really want a strong connection between the medical office building and the hospital. So we've tried to push that and tried to, have maintained that Avon Ferry entrance. But I think as the town develops, Main Street is probably going to get the most traffic.
But wouldn't initially be Avon Ferry Road, initially?
Probably, yeah.
I mean,
Until
it seems to
Pine
me
Street
that
gets
way.
relined.
That's where the rest of the building
And
is.
it's right in, right out on Main Street.
That's correct.
It is, yep.
So, and then on Avon Ferry, so I guess people heading back towards the other side of town might go out Avon Ferry and come up.
Yeah.
Right.
One other thing that might be helpful that I can offer is we did push the hospital almost as close to the MOB as we could, again, to make that pedestrian connection stronger. And that's a positive thing because it moves it from directly behind the residences. If you're standing along the property line looking south, you're gonna, the hospital is not directly behind them, it's sort of offset.
That it?
So there's definitely a lack of sidewalks on that part of town. So what are we going to do to make this more pedestrian friendly?
So I completely agree. I think every development meeting I've ever sat in or been a part of on behalf of the town, we talk about walkability, pedestrian connectivity, making our town more connected. And if we're talking about a couple football fields here to really have a whole stretch of connectivity through the heart of our downtown, the heart of Holly Springs. I think not having that conversation, and I realize it's offsite, I realize there's a right-of-way discussion that has to be had there, but it is a glaring omission in the success of this project by not having a full stream of connectivity down Main Street. And we get one shot at this. This project is going to have a critical impact on our town for a long time. And to leave that one piece of sidewalk out at this stage is just irresponsible, I think. And we've got to do something or investigate a way to make that better, or see if it's possible to have that connection. And I feel very strongly about that.
Do you have any idea how many feet that would be? Probably not. Where their sidewalk will end to the end of Maple?
What was it, Rachel, 150?
150 feet.
There's no
There's no sidewalk at all, so
At
it's
all.
coming up to.
It stopped.
it would
But,
have to go-
but if you cross the street towards the barber shop, there's a
Yeah.
sidewalk that ends on the other side there of Maple. So if you have a crosswalk over, then a crosswalk over to the
Yeah.
sidewalk, cross Main, cross Maple, and then you have sidewalk all the way
Right.
up till it crosses Main again,
Right.
and then up in front of, you're zigzagging, right? Not
Right,
ideal, but
right.
it's still a connection.
still is a
It's still
connection.
It's still a full stream connection up Main Street, which we don't have.
Right.
This is a huge opportunity to get us that in a town that prides ourselves and our residents are looking for connectivity. We've got to get this right.
Well, and the point about having a bridge to go to the mall across to get fast food or walkability to the development that's happening downtown with restaurants. I mean, that's also part of, they can get food that way in other stores. So that's cheaper to help build the sidewalks downtown than try to get them across the bypass.
Truth to that.
So what options do we have? What can we do if we want to make those connections better at this point?
Do we have a rough estimate on building 150 feet worth of sidewalk? Is there any way? How much? Mm-hmm. That's very basic. Okay.
Is that something we could do?
There's right-of-way acquisition needed for that sidewalk that might not be included in that 30,000, but perhaps, the hospital can fill that.
Considering the size of this project, it seems like a very
Right.
small.
Very small.
Very
And I
small.
get it. It's off-site. I get it. The minimum requirements are met. We've seen a ton of development projects come through here where people have offered off-site improvements, mainly to our transportation network and roads, above and beyond what they have to do. In a project of this magnitude, I just think we got this one shot. And I think it would be a really good faith effort and beneficial to our community for this applicant to investigate that and let us know if that's something that's possible.
Or in fee in lieu, is that another alternative?
Just wanted to say I'm representing the hospital. They would be more than happy to put the sidewalk down. I think the real challenge is the right-of-way. So if the town maybe could assist with that, then extending the sidewalk is, to your point, sort of a small chunk.
Does that make sense,
Yes.
Kendra, from engineering standpoint?
Yes, definitely putting it on their plan that they would do the sidewalk. I think the question is for the legal department as far as acquisition of that, what's needed across that property. There is a infrastructure reimbursement agreement that'll be coming to you at a later meeting that perhaps that could be made part of. I just offer that.
So how many, to join, how many properties are we probably impacting?
I think
it's one.
Just one?
Just that one, yeah.
Just that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
can't be that expensive.
30,000.
It's, the property, it sets kind of high off the road. It's about 10 or so feet higher than the road, single-family residence, and we'd have to get that sidewalk grade down. So there would be some grading on that property. They would have to look at the design and see what easements are needed. So the applicant would do the design and then get those maps to legal so that we would know how much acquisition would be needed. It'll be a little bit more, it's not just putting it on the back of the ditch. I mean, there's some grading there, and with the house there, we will have to look at that.
Are we able to add a condition to the development plan approval at this stage, or is that something we'd have to table and come back to?
I think you could probably add it, that it's approved subject to a developer agreement
Yeah.
that lays out construction of a sidewalk with the town's acquisition of right-of-way, that type of thing.
When you mean the town's acquisition,
The town would.
the town would acquire the acquisition?
That's what
they
I'm
would build the
hearing.
And they
sidewalk.
would do the sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, they would not be able to,
Okay.
Rex might have the power of eminent domain, I'm not sure, but certainly
Okay.
not the sidewalks.
Yeah, we're not going to.
That would not be neighborly.
Would they reimburse us for the eminent domain?
Our typical developer agreement does have that requirement, so we'd have to look at that property in a little more detail and see what the fair market value, if there might be enough right-of-way existing, I'm not sure to, we would have to get it all surveyed and see, and if there's existing right-of-way to where we could put it, then there'd be no right-of-way costs, but, and as Kendra said, it depends on how much slope they have to cut out and how far back they have to go. There have been sidewalks that have been a total take of property that we put in
Yeah.
Holly Springs, Raleigh Street, and Herb Street comes to mind. We had one complete take. It was a very expensive 100-foot of sidewalk back in the day, so.
But typically, they have in the infrastructure reimbursement agreement, if condemnation, if the town gets that property under condemnation, the cost associated with that acquisition usually is paid by the developer. That's usually one of the requirements in the IRA. So I think we're still working on that, but that could be something that is a point in that we actually are acquiring it, but we get reimbursed on that expenditure.
Well, I was really hoping we could come to some conclusion tonight versus tabling. I think if that's a suggestion, John, about making that as a condition on the motion, I think that's fine. At the same time, to table it.
You've got some findings of facts to make with respect to the variances and waivers.
Right.
If you get through those and then go to approve the development plan, and you want to make, whoever makes the motion to include the language to include in the developer's agreement, the development plan is approved subject to adequate developer's agreement that reflects construction of 100 feet of sidewalk to the north. I think that would be enough.
Makes sense to me. What do you think, council?
50 feet.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other conversation on that point? If not, we've got some motions to go through.
I got one more point, different one.
Sure.
As we go through the motions, I think one of the things that was, all the waivers are packaged together, but if we recall back to the beginning, 18 WAV 15 is the undergrounding of utilities.
Yep.
The way I understood in the beginning is if we deny that waiver, that would still require them to underground the utilities on the Main Street side and accept the fee in lieu on Avent Ferry. The fee in lieu is required regardless of whether or not we waive the Main Street side or deny the Main Street side. I personally would like to unpackage 18 WAV 15 from the overall waivers and vote on that one separately, unless we're all in agreement that we go one way. I think without the sufficient proof that staff has said we don't have sufficient proof from Duke Energy on the lack of the need to underground those wires, I just feel, again, right, one shot at that, you have the helicopter traffic, it's just, to me, it makes a lot of sense to do that. So I'm not in favor of a waiver that would prevent the undergrounding of the Main Street utilities.
I'm in agreement.
Me too.
Makes sense.
Okay. Seems consensus.
All right, I'll do the first motion.
I guess.
Any questions?
I think that's it.
All right, motion to adopt Resolution 18-36, making necessary findings of fact for the special exception use 18-SEU-07 for UNC Rex Hospital and variances and waivers associated with Development Plan 10-DP06-A05.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The reservation
Are
on
you-
that one.
Yeah.
That was this,
Talking about.
Wouldn't that be a development plan and not
Yeah.
findings?
That's not the
Okay.
findings.
That's a finding.
Findings.
You wanna not find as a fact what they're asking you to find
Oh, okay.
on the waiver. I'm trying to pull up the resolution.
You lost me on that one.
So,
Try me again.
Did you want
I would have
to
to-
adopt
does it
this
say waiver? Yeah,
resolution
waivers.
minus that waiver?
Less-
Right. You want to
less
pull
the
that
waiver.
waiver out?
WAV 15.
Minus 18 dash,
18,
WAV-15.
15, yes, that's correct.
so what you need is a
We rescind.
amendment on the motion that Councilman O'Brien made to,
I would like to amend Councilmember O'Brien's motion to remove 18-WAV
dash
15
15.
from that motion.
so you need a
Second.
second on that amendment.
Second.
Motion been made and
You vote on
seconded.
the amendment,
vote, all in,
All in favor?
on the amendment,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
so the amendment passes.
Amendment,
And now,
amendment passes.
Now, the waiver.
Now you can.
and now you can vote on the main motion.
Okay.
All right.
Did we,
Which stands made and seconded, I believe, your main
Right.
motion,
I
which is
seconded.
now amended.
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The
Made
motion,
that a little more difficult than we're.
some motion just passed. Yes.
So now this motion would be to adopt that resolution in full minus, that waiver, 18 WAV 15 has been removed, so this would be to adopt the resolution with that waiver removed.
Having made the necessary findings of fact, motion to grant waivers of regulations requested in association with development plan for Rex UNC Hospital with conditions listed in agenda packets.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Having made the necessary findings of fact, motion to grant variances of UDO requirements requested in association with development plan for Rex UNC Hospital with conditions listed.
So I do need you to articulate, I'm sorry, that you are making all the necessary findings of fact with the exception of the underground
Okay.
electrical lines, in which you are not making those
Okay.
findings.
All right, so let me start over again. With the exception of 18-WAV-15, having made the necessary findings of fact, motion to grant variances of UDO requirements requested in association with development plan for Rex UNC Hospital with conditions listed in agenda packets.
second,
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
So before we move on to the last motion, John, do we need to have an official vote on that waiver that we removed from the resolution?
I mean, basically, they've all articulated that they can't find as a fact those facts that require them to be found on a need for not burying the power lines, right? So I don't think you need a separate motion. You've just, the findings
did that
have
already.
just failed.
That's right.
Right. So
Right.
you've just been unable, as a group, been unable to find that as a fact. You've articulated it here, and I think that's enough.
Okay. So 4 would be okay as is, from a legal standpoint.
Oh, wait.
We're on
This is
something else.
development agreement on this one.
Or 4. Sorry.
So this is making the findings of fact, having made the findings of fact for the special exception use, which you have already done. This is your motion on the special exception use petition and the development petition with your added condition of the developer agreement.
Okay.
Okay, so having made the necessary findings of fact, motion to approve special exception use 18-SEU-07 and development plan 10-DP-06-A05 for UNC Rex Healthcare with conditions listed in the agenda package, subject to development agreement with the town to acquire the right-of-way for the sidewalks for approximately 150 feet.
Which includes the construction by
By the
the
developer.
applicant. by the
Which,
developer.
which includes the construction by the applicant.
Yep.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
So on
Thank
the
you.
two lines, just so I make sure I'm clear,
Sorry.
we're just not going to take any action on that at all. There's not going to be a waiver at all.
There's no waiver, there's been no finding.
There's no finding of fact,
Cross
so
it
there's no
out.
waiver.
I think you need to reflect in the minutes that the council was unable to make a finding of fact that was required for that waiver.
Okay? We good?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I had to litigate this exact same issue, and the judge was very specific that nobody articulated that they couldn't find, and it was the Board of Adjustments. So, and we get the tape here transcribed, so as weird as it sounds, I think you've done enough to say, and
Okay.
you've each articulated that you can't find that fact, so I think
Okay.
we're good.
Got it. All right, let's move right along. Agenda item 8A, consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the new business, and that is going to be 8.5 or whatever. And I would like to defer this to the town manager, please.
Just the agenda, but this is the action.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight, what I'd like to request from the council is to add or to amend your current meeting calendar to add the September 25th workshop, which would be next week, next Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. The purpose of that would be to have some dialogue and obtain guidance from the governing body as it relates to future Parks and Rec potential investments. And so that would be the main focus of it, and as well, an opportunity to discuss a little bit about the future recruitment of the town clerk position. So those would be the two anticipated topics at this point.
Okay.
So
Want to hit that motion?
Is
Are there
this,
questions on that?
well, real quick, is this, if we're talking Parks and Rec, is this where the Parks and Rec Committee will also be present,
They will be.
or whoever wants to? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So moved.
Motion to amend the calendar year 2018 council regular meeting calendar on file to add a workshop at 6 p.m. Tuesday, September 25th.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zipping right along to other business, I will be a little more brief tonight than normal because, and what I want to say is, Kendra and the whole department, I am so excited about seeing crosswalk safety with flashing lights. It just kind of makes me teared. And I really believe that's sensational. it's been a long time in coming. Crosswalk safety is something we've talked about. I'm still gonna talk about it. But still, this is a fantastic improvement for the town. And I think we're gonna save lives. I really do. So thank you, engineering department. Thank you, anybody else that did anything about it. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, everybody who did anything about the hurricane, but that's coming later. Other business.
I did want to wish everyone Yom Kippur's tomorrow, so I believe the saying is a good final sealing, or Gamar Shanti Ma Tova. I hope I have that right. But thinking of everyone for that holy holiday.
Okay. What else?
Thank you to Chief Smith and the fire department for the September 11th memorial. That was very moving and a great speech. The Saturday is the Holly Springs Police Department Run with the Police 10K. I'll be out there.
Run with them, not from them?
Run with them, not from them. Definitely. But that should be a lot of fun.
Just kudos to the town manager. I know you're going to give him kudos too, but during the hurricane this past weekend, a phenomenal job with your staff, from Tamara, Mark, communicating to the public. That was excellent. To Luncey and his team, not only during the storm, but after the storm. Great feedback from the residents. And to our police and fire, unfortunately, I actually had the fire department out at my house on Friday when smoke detectors went off, and they were there in the wind and rain, and I kudos to the response and how quickly they got out there during that hurricane. So I was at the command center on Friday. Amazing how the police, the fire, the communication was on spot, and hats off. Great job.
What else?
It really did. It made, and seeing the pictures, especially of the command center and everybody in action and the constant communication, really made people feel safe and recognize that we were, right there in front of it all, ready to go. And that also goes for all the people in Holly Springs that just the last couple of days, everywhere you go, someone's taking up a collection for our coast, or including our town, different departments in our town, to help the people that are less affected. We have a lot of refugees here right now from Wilmington and from New Bern. My family was has been very sadly affected. My in-laws' house down in Wilmington is 3/4 gone right now. So, but they were just so, and my mother-in-law told me to say this, so impressed with all the information that our town and how well and how ready to go everybody was. And so, as always, our staff has done such a great job. And the people of Holly Springs are just awesome for coming together. It's sad that it takes this for, country to come together, but we've done well. So thank you.
Let me echo on that for just a second. Jeremiah Caswell, who's the outreach pastor for Oasis Church, has got a group together, and they're in waiting. Perhaps, Luncey, in case you need some extra help, all you gotta do is call them, they're there. And New Hope Community, or no, not New Hope, Hope Community Church is now a distribution area. You can bring that kind of information and products there. And if they don't need it right here, they'll take it to the coast.
Yep.
So that's just echoing what you just said. What else?
I don't think we can say thank you enough, but our community is very fortunate, Mr. Manager, and all of your staff, to have the level of professionalism, dedication, and caring that our staff has for our town. Thank you to everybody that participated in the preparations and everyone that had a hand in it. It was great. It was awesome. And our residents are very lucky to have, folks like you all who are very dedicated to making sure that our town is safe and, ensuring the well-being of our residents. So thank all of you guys that had a part, and ladies as well. Just one other thing, Mr. Mayor. Sure. Is Adam here?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
he is?
Hiding over there. Adam, question on P&R matter. I can't remember if we heard this, or maybe it was just a discussion I had at some point, or if it was at our retreat. At one point, there was talk, and it was even brought up at the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, about decoupling our programming schedule from the Wake County Schools decision on cancellations. You'd be surprised the number of emails and phone calls I got about this the other day on, not necessarily childcare when the school closed, but some of our fitness programs and athletics, on the turf fields and things like that. I don't remember if it came before us and if we've acted on that, but if we could revisit that matter or where that is in the process.
Surprise.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
And I was going to go into further detail about thanking everybody, but I have talked to the town manager. I think it perhaps is most important and appropriate for him. Number one, he gets kudos from me forever on his professionalism, but how he did it through the staff and through everybody else. So I'm going to let him talk more about that, and I'll shut up.
No, it's fine. Thank you very
Town
much, Mayor.
manager.
All your comments are very kind and appreciative, and I give the full credit to the staff. About a week prior to the storm event, staff and Parks and Rec had already started thinking about Bass Lake and releasing some of the pressure and water there at Bass Lake in anticipation. So a lot of work was going on prior, and I really give all the credit to the staff, police, fire, Public Works. Obviously, they're very much on the front lines there of it, but what was important, I think, about this particular event is that we planned with everybody in the room, and that included even people from finance, because all aspects of the city needed to support this effort. And it was a great team effort. That was something that I was really proud of, and again, I give all the credit to the staff who just did a fantastic job this past week. They were prepared and ready for the worst. So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
And this is week 4 for you?
Yeah, right.
Pretty
Well, I've
amazing.
told some people it was a great team building opportunity last week, so we took full advantage of that. So that was great.
Impressive.
Thank you.
Well, just to echo not only that, but North Carolina's 20 safest cities of 2018. Guess who's number 1 again? And guess who is now number 3? Pinehurst. I only say that for one reason. They were number 1 for maybe a half a minute one year. And when somebody said, when's the last time you stole a golf course or shot one? Whatever. But now they're number 3, and size doesn't matter anymore. So we're still number uno. And I compliment everybody for being number 1. Number 1 sounds good, doesn't it? It really does.
Mayor,
Anything else?
if I could add to that, just to echo and say a couple additional comments. Obviously, with what a wonderful award for this community, and first and foremost, that's a reflection of the mayor and the council and your commitment and leadership around public safety in this community. And it's also a reflection around the police department, their efforts at community-oriented policing, being proactive in our policing efforts. And obviously, there are a lot of other factors that go into being a safe community, but I think those two are some of the foundational components that go into that. So, yeah, a real big congratulations to the community and to you all on staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor, closed session?
I do have 3 matters to discuss under the attorney-client privilege litigation matters. One is a land acquisition for the Wood property sewer easement that was a resolution and condemnation that occurred about a month ago. So pursuant to the statute that's on screen there, 143.318.11A3, there's the Wood property acquisition. There is an update on the current litigation that I would like to discuss with you, and that's Current Builders versus Town of Holly Springs, and another update on lawsuit entitled JDIP and Colony Insurance versus the Town of Holly Springs and Comtran.
Okay. Motion?
Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks for sticking around.